Jordan Myers pressed his phone against his ear with a frustrated sigh as he wove through the crowded terminal of Boston Logan International Airport. His private jet was grounded for urgent maintenance, forcing him onto a commercial flight to New York, an indignity he had not suffered in years. Dressed in a sleek, tailored Italian suit, the color of midnight, he moved with sharp, purposeful steps. Each polished shoe struck the floor in a cadence that echoed his inner irritation. The boarding gate teemed with restless passengers, most of them already crammed into the narrow jet bridge. Jordan grimaced at the commotion, mentally listing the meetings he was missing just by standing there. He was the CEO of Myers Development Group, a man who prided himself on punctuality and control. Now, both felt imperiled by this unexpected inconvenience. "Sir, may I scan your boarding pass?" asked the airline attendant, trying to hide her own stress behind a courteous smile. Jordan handed it over, his green eyes flicking to the flight number. Only when the woman cleared him to board did he allow himself a short nod. Entering the plane, Jordan found the aisle full of shuffling travelers grappling with overhead bins. He exhaled slowly. Patience was a virtue he rarely practiced. Spotting his row, he was dismayed to see a young woman, no older than her early 20s, wrestling a small suitcase while a little boy clung to her leg, tears streaming down his rosy cheeks. The child's cries were shrill, echoing through the cramped cabin. Passengers were turning their heads, frowning in annoyance. Jordan's seat was right next to them. He considered the seating chart a cruel joke of fate. With his jaw set, he slid into the aisle seat, stuffing his laptop bag beneath the seat in front of him. As the boy's wailing intensified, the woman, clearly frazzled, looked around helplessly. "I'm sorry," she said, voice trembling. He's never been on a plane before, and I think he's scared." Jordan studied her face. Wide brown eyes, a scattering of freckles across her nose, red hair pulled into a loose ponytail. She wore a college sweatshirt, and though she tried to look composed, her eyes brimmed with anxiety. "No need to apologize," Jordan responded curtly, though it was more a reflex than genuine sympathy. He retrieved his tablet, thinking he could review contract proposals. Yet the child's sobs made concentration impossible. Passengers around them were sighing, rolling their eyes, or shifting in their seats, silently urging someone to do something. After several minutes of unrelenting crying, the flight attendants began their safety demonstration, but the boy's sobs drowned out the instructions. Jordan felt a strange pressure in his chest, a mixture of discomfort and an unexpected pull of compassion. He glanced down at the child, noticing how small his hands looked. Something in those tear-filled green eyes reminded him of a distant part of himself. He set his tablet aside with a faint grimace. "What's his name?" he asked, his tone softer than before. "Jamie," she replied, relief flooding her features that he was speaking kindly. "I'm Sophie, his babysitter. His mom had an emergency at work. She needed me to bring him to New York." Jordan nodded, then fumbled for a moment. He didn't regularly interact with children. He had no siblings, and most of his corporate circles were adults who kept family matters private. Yet he recalled a silly magic trick an old acquaintance once showed him. Reaching for the small napkin left on his tray table, he fashioned it into a makeshift puppet. Clearing his throat in awkward self-consciousness, he began wiggling the napkin as if it had a life of its own. Jamie's cries slowed to ragged sniffles. He stared at the dancing napkin with uncertain fascination. Jordan felt odd, performing a small spectacle in front of strangers. But he pressed on. He made the napkin hop from one hand to the other, creating a small gasp from Jamie, who suddenly seemed more curious than upset. "Shh, see?" Jordan murmured, letting the napkin vanish behind his hand and reappear. "It can do all sorts of things when you pay close attention," the little boy hiccuped, focusing on Jordan's calm, steady voice. The tension in the road diminished as other passengers realized the child was beginning to settle. Sophie exhaled audibly, a grateful smile creeping onto her face. Jordan continued the silly performance for another minute, until Jamie's tears were replaced by something akin to wonder. The boy pressed closer to Jordan, fascinated by this unexpected display of kindness. "You're really good at that," Sophie whispered. "Thank you." Jordan shrugged, but a faint warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the press of the cabin air. "Never thought I'd use that trick again," he said quietly. "Guess it came in handy." The plane began to taxi, and Jamie, thoroughly distracted, clung to the seat's armrest instead of sobbing. Jordan settled back, still faintly amazed at the situation. He could practically feel the tension uncoil in his spine. It was just a small act of empathy. But for someone usually governed by spreadsheets and architectural plans, it felt unexpectedly profound. He closed his eyes for a moment, unaware that everything he believed about himself and his controlled life was about to change in ways he never could have predicted. When the seatbelt sign blinked off, Jordan's immediate instinct was to return to his laptop and bury himself in data, yet he couldn't ignore the little boy at his elbow, now gazing at him with bright, curious eyes. Jamie shifted in his seat and timidly reached for the pack of peanuts the flight attendant had dropped off. Sophie watched them both, relief still etched in her face. Jordan cleared his throat as he retrieved a small bottle of water. He had never considered himself particularly warm or fatherly, but something about the child's unfiltered trust, so easily won by a simple magic trick, made him feel strangely protective. A sudden pang of unease shot through him. He turned to study Jamie's small hand as the boy tore open the packet of peanuts. On the back of Jamie's left hand was a faint birthmark in the shape of a half-moon. Jordan felt his pulse spike. He had the exact same birthmark, in the exact same place. For a moment, he froze. It was such a peculiar detail, one he rarely thought about, except when someone would occasionally remark on its unique shape. "Where'd you get that from, bud?" he asked, trying to sound casual. Jamie blinked up at him, small eyebrows arching in confusion. "I don't know," he mumbled. "Mommy says I was born with it." Sophie looked over, curiosity flitting across her features. "It's always been there. Sometimes kids ask him if it's a scar or something, but it's just a birthmark." Jordan forced himself to nod, though his chest felt tight. He glanced at his own hand, recalling how doctors had told him it was a benign mark. He'd never met anyone else with the same shape. Not even close. It had always felt like some trivial quirk that set him apart. Now, seeing the half-moon on Jamie's hand rattled him more than he cared to admit. He tried to remain composed. "So, where are you two headed in New York?" he asked, struggling to maintain his usual corporate veneer. Sophie offered him a shy smile. "We're meeting Jamie's mother at LaGuardia. She's waiting for us at the arrivals area. It's the first time I've traveled alone with him. I think that's why he was so upset. It's all new, and he misses his mom." Jamie wriggled a bit, leaning his head against Sophie's arm. Jordan sensed the child's remaining nervousness, but also a growing curiosity. Jamie kept peeking at Jordan, half expecting another magic trick. Against his own better judgment, Jordan couldn't stop himself from asking, "Jamie, do you see your dad much?" The moment the question left his lips, he regretted it. It was none of his business. Yet the coincidence of that birthmark was gnawing at him. Sophie hesitated, her cheeks turning slightly pink. She cast a quick glance at Jamie, as though worried the question might upset him. His father isn't really around. Sometimes Jamie asks questions, but Alicia, his mum, does her best to fill both roles. Jordan's heart thudded uncomfortably. He shifted in the cramped seat, recalling that he was typically methodical and level-headed. This sense of intrigue and panic bubbling up inside him was foreign. He reminded himself that it was impossible. He was always careful. Every relationship he'd had was fleeting, and none had left him with any illusions of fatherhood. Still, the identical birthmark hovered in his mind. It made his thoughts race back to brief, romantic encounters he'd had in the past. The memory of a conference 4 years ago in Chicago where he'd met a brilliant financial strategist with warm eyes. But no, that was improbable. He swallowed hard, trying to regain composure. "Look," he said gently, attempting to shift gears. "I might have been abrupt before. I'm just not used to, well, any of this." He gestured vaguely to the child. "I appreciate that you handled him as best you could." Sophie's gaze softened. "Thank you for helping calm him down. You were surprisingly good at it." Jordan gave a short, self-deprecating chuckle. "I guess I'm full of surprises." He stared at Jamie's hand again, quietly unnerved. Across the aisle, a flight attendant approached with a friendly smile. "Can I get you anything else to drink, sir?" Jordan shook his head, but requested a juice for Jamie. He was too preoccupied to eat or drink himself, his mind spinning with possibilities he refused to entertain. He needed a rational explanation. Perhaps that half-moon shape wasn't so uncommon. People sometimes shared birthmarks by chance, right? Yet a prickling at the back of his neck refused to fade. He exhaled, turning to gaze out the window at the patchwork of clouds. Boston was vanishing behind them, and ahead lay New York, brimming with his next set of business deals, or so he thought. But a nagging voice in his head told him there might be more waiting for him there than boardrooms and contract negotiations. He glanced once more at Jamie's hand, then at his own. His heart beat faster. By the end of this flight, he would still be Jordan Myers, methodical CEO, or so he insisted to himself. Yet there was already a subtle shift in the air, one that suggested the foundation of his orderly world was cracking in ways he couldn't fully understand. Jordan spent the remainder of the flight pretending to work, though in truth, he was merely scrolling past the same real estate documents without absorbing a word. Every so often, he caught himself glancing at Jamie, who had drifted off to sleep against Sophie's shoulder. His mind kept returning to that unsettling question of paternity, a notion he tried repeatedly to dismiss as far-fetched. He assured himself it was merely an odd coincidence. Yes, the child had green eyes. Yes, there was a distinctive half-moon birthmark. And yes, there had been a woman, Alicia Hughes, with whom he'd shared a single evening of rare vulnerability almost 4 years ago. He had thoroughly enjoyed her company during a business conference, but after that night, she left early for an urgent matter, and they never reconnected. He'd changed his phone number soon after, and life moved on. He remembered the swirl of wine in a hotel bar, the conversation full of mutual admiration for each other's ambition, and then that powerful moment where, against all reason, they let themselves indulge in a brief, passionate union. But it couldn't be. Jordan was always cautious. He'd never once considered the possibility that he might have fathered a child. If Alicia had gotten pregnant, she would have found a way to contact him. Wouldn't she? He shut his laptop, feeling a dull headache forming. As the plane began its descent, he resolved to focus on the original purpose of his trip, a major meeting with potential partners in New York. He was set to finalize a lucrative deal that would expand his firm's portfolio. That was his priority, not some improbable paternity drama spun by his overactive mind. Once the seatbelt sign illuminated, the flight attendants started their preparations for landing. Jordan made sure his tray table was up and his seatbelt tight. Sophie stirred gently, waking Jamie with a soft coaxing. The little boy rubbed his eyes, peered around with mild confusion, and then looked up at Jordan. "We're almost there," Jordan said, his voice surprisingly gentle. Jamie nodded, still half asleep, Jordan forced a polite smile, then turned his gaze forward, bracing for the usual jostle of landing. Outside the window, the Manhattan skyline glimmered in the distance. In a few minutes, he'd be off this plane, stepping back into the realm of polished conference rooms and high-stakes negotiations. He told himself he was relieved, yet a small part of him felt oddly reluctant to leave. The strangest feeling was that he might never see Jamie again. When the plane touched down and taxied to the gate, the tension in Jordan's shoulders began to ebb. He told himself that once he walked off this aircraft, he'd bury his suspicions. After all, Alicia was a common name, and even if the Alicia from 4 years ago happened to be the boy's mother, that would be an extraordinary coincidence, one he didn't have the mental bandwidth to entertain. "Are you traveling alone?" Sophie asked, her tone curious. Jordan nodded as he stood, retrieving his carry-on from the overhead compartment. "Yes. My usual plane had unexpected engine trouble. This was a last-minute booking." She managed a small grin. "Well, lucky for me you ended up here. I don't know how I would have managed if Jamie's crying continued the whole flight." Jordan offered a polite nod. "Glad I could help." They shuffled into the aisle, inching toward the exit. Jamie clung to Sophie's hand, glancing back at Jordan every so often. Jordan caught himself smiling, which felt oddly personal. He coughed, adjusting the lapel of his suit jacket to regain composure. The moment they stepped into the bustling airport corridor, Jordan felt the familiar rush of a place where time and business converged. Phones rang, announcements blared, and travelers hurried past in every direction. This was the environment in which he thrived. Controlled chaos, logistical puzzles, the next big deal always around the corner. But as he prepared to stride off toward baggage claim, he hesitated. He watched Sophie juggling her phone and Jamie's backpack. For reasons he couldn't explain, he asked, "Need a hand?" Sophie paused. "Oh, that's very kind, but I'm sure you have somewhere to be." Jordan almost laughed at himself. He did have somewhere to be, a taxi waiting to whisk him downtown, yet something made him linger. "It's fine. I'm headed the same direction for my suitcase." He grabbed the small backpack from Sophie's arm, ignoring the odd twinge inside his chest. They walked together, the crowd swirling around them. Sophie glanced at him, pushing a stray red curl behind her ear. "Jamie, say thank you to Mr. Jordan." The boy tilted his head up. "Thank you," he whispered, slightly shy. Jordan mustered a faint smile. "You're welcome, kid." They reached the area where Sophie's luggage was supposed to arrive. With each step, Jordan felt the tension building again in his gut. He was determined to get his bag and vanish into the stream of business travelers. He was about to wish them well when Sophie's phone buzzed. "That's Alicia," she said, sounding relieved. "She's at the security checkpoint waiting for us. We'll meet her by the gate." Jordan nodded automatically, though he could already feel the questions tugging at his mind. Was this Alicia the same Alicia? He shook off the thought. This was just a coincidence. Sophie and Jamie began walking away, and Jordan pivoted toward the baggage carousel. As he did, he sneaked a final glance at Jamie's hand and saw that familiar half-moon shape. He told himself it was pure fantasy to think it meant anything deeper. He had no time for illusions. He retrieved his suitcase, posture stiff, trying to will his thoughts back to business. He told himself it was over. He'd done his good deed, and now he would never see them again. Yet the echo of Jamie's voice lingered in his mind. And no matter how rational he prided himself on being, a flicker of doubt continued to smolder in his chest. Jordan hastened through the airport's busy corridor, determined to find a taxi and push aside his unsettling thoughts. Yet as he passed a row of shops and cafes, the memory of a conference 4 years prior refused to let him be. He saw himself at a hotel lobby in Chicago, tie loosened after a long day of back-to-back meetings. He remembered leaning against the bar, swirling a glass of whiskey in his hand. Alicia Hughes had been right beside him, eyes bright as they debated market trends and corporate strategies. She was witty, confident, traits that Jordan admired but rarely encountered in a way that piqued both his mind and his heart. They had escaped the noise of the bar for a quieter lounge upstairs. Conversation turned personal, childhood dreams, career hurdles, the exhaustion of always striving for more. Jordan recalled how Alicia's voice grew soft as she talked about wanting a family someday, but also fearing it might slow her professional ascent. She had looked at him then, with a vulnerability that mirrored his own. One drink led to another, and the rest of that night lived in Jordan's memory as a blur of unexpected warmth and rare closeness. Now, weaving through passengers in the terminal, he felt a twinge of remorse. Perhaps he had fled too quickly afterward. He had left Chicago before sunrise for another business meeting. When he lost his phone a few weeks later, he never replaced Alicia's contact information. Over time, the memory of her faded into a relic of his past, a pleasant, if haunting, recollection of a woman who'd made him question his lonely lifestyle. Jordan forced himself to check the time on his watch. His driver was likely waiting outside, yet his mind kept replaying the boy's birthmark. If Alicia truly had tried to find him, it would explain a great many things. He clenched his jaw, recalling the father who raised him with an iron fist. His own mother had left when he was 6, never to return. Perhaps that was why he had always been so guarded about relationships. Nothing in his life felt permanent, so why risk pain by forming attachments? Approaching the exit, Jordan paused at a window overlooking the arrivals area below. Briefly, he scanned the crowd, families reuniting, lovers embracing, business travelers rushing to cabs. A flicker of movement caught his eye, a small boy dashing across the floor, arms outstretched. Jamie. And standing there to receive him was a woman with dark brown hair gently cascading around her shoulders. Even at a distance, Jordan recognized the graceful tilt of her chin, that warm, intelligent gaze. It was Alicia Hughes. He froze, heart pounding against his ribs like a drum. There, in the flesh, stood the woman he had not seen or spoken to in nearly 4 years. And in her arms was the child who could be, no, must be his son. He swallowed hard, feeling an odd rush of fear and exhilaration all at once. Could it really be? He almost stormed away, insisting to himself that he had a critical meeting to attend. But the pull was too strong. In a daze, Jordan moved to the escalator that carried him down to the arrivals level. Each step he took felt oddly weightless, as though he was drifting through a dream. He reached the bottom just as Alicia bent to scoop Jamie into her arms, pressing a tender kiss to his forehead. Sophie stood beside them, relief clear on her face. Then Alicia glanced up, scanning the crowd, and locked eyes with Jordan. She stood perfectly still for a moment, like she was seeing a ghost. Her complexion paled as she carefully set Jamie on his feet. The boy looked between the two adults, puzzled by the tension in the air. Jordan's mouth went dry. He managed a hushed, "Hello, Alicia." Her lips parted, but no words emerged at first. She pressed a hand to her temple as though dizzy from the sight of him. Then, in a voice low and charged with emotion, she said, "Jordan, you're here." An avalanche of questions formed in Jordan's mind. Why hadn't she told him? How had she coped alone? But before he could speak, Alicia swallowed hard, her gaze drifting to Jamie. Unable to hold back, Jordan's eyes flickered to the little boy. He noticed the same half-moon birthmark, the same green eyes, and the tilt of a chin that matched Jordan's own reflection in the mirror. Alicia's lips trembled, and finally she spoke words that crashed over him like a tidal wave. "He is your son." The noise of the airport seemed to vanish. For a moment, Jordan felt paralyzed, as though the world had narrowed to just the three of them. Rage, shock, and a fierce protectiveness warred within him. He'd wanted to deny the possibility, to rationalize it away. But no spreadsheet or business logic could handle the enormity of this revelation. Jordan wasn't sure how long he stood there, transfixed by the sight of Alicia and Jamie. Every instinct screamed at him to regain composure. He was a CEO, a man who thrived on logic and efficiency. But each beat of his heart reminded him that this situation was beyond any negotiation he had ever faced. Finally, Alicia cleared her throat. Her voice wavered as she glanced around, conscious of the crowd's curious stares. "Let's move somewhere quieter," she said. "Please." Jordan nodded, struggling to contain the tidal wave of questions bursting inside him. They found a secluded spot near a family lounge, stepping aside while Sophie and Jamie hovered at a short distance. Alicia ushered her babysitter to take the boy to a nearby vending machine for a snack, giving the adults a sliver of privacy. The moment Jamie was out of earshot, Jordan's words erupted in a tense rush, though he fought to keep his voice low. "Why didn't you tell me?" Alicia wrapped her arms around herself, eyes flicking toward the floor. "I tried. At first, I wasn't sure if I should, but eventually I tried calling you. You'd changed your number. I emailed, but never received a response. I reached out to a mutual acquaintance, but that led nowhere. After months of trying, I gave up." Jordan swallowed, remembering the chaotic period when he'd lost his phone and was too busy to restore every contact. Regret twisted in his chest. "I had no idea," he muttered, searching her face. "I would never have just abandoned you." She exhaled, her gaze swimming with conflicting emotions, anger, sadness, maybe even relief. "It's been 4 years, Jordan. I raised him by myself. He has grandparents, my parents, and Sophie to help, but he's never known his father." Jordan pressed a hand against his temple, the stress pounding behind his eyes. "Do you have any idea how surreal this is? I only boarded that commercial flight because my jet was grounded. Otherwise, I might not have seen Jamie at all." Alicia gave a short, humorless laugh. "Life has a way of bringing us face to face with things we run from." He stared at her, absorbing the reality that he had a son. The full weight of that fact was settling in, rousing both a fierce protectiveness and a sense of utter unpreparedness. "Where do we go from here?" he asked, voice subdued. Alicia shook her head. "I don't know. My priority is Jamie's well-being. I'm not here to demand anything, child support, or to disrupt your life, but he deserves to know his father." Jordan felt a flicker of panic. He was always in control, always dictating the terms of every arrangement, yet this was bigger than any business deal. "I need time," he admitted, glancing in Jamie's direction. The boy was peering at them curiously from behind Sophie's leg. "I need to figure out how to do this right. I can't just barge into his life and make promises I'm not sure how to keep." Alicia's eyes softened, though her jaw remained tense. "I understand. But he's not just an idea, Jordan. He's a real child who's already 4 years old. I won't let him get hurt." Jordan nodded slowly. In that moment, he realized that standing at the crossroads between fatherhood and corporate ambition was terrifying. He had spent so long perfecting a shield of detachment. This revelation shattered it. "Let me meet him," Jordan said at last, voice shaky with uncharacteristic vulnerability. "Properly, I mean, not just as a stranger on a plane." Alicia regarded him for a long moment, then nodded. She turned to beckon Jamie over. The little boy walked cautiously, bright eyes scanning Jordan's face. Jordan crouched down, uncertain how one greeted a child that might be their own. "Jamie, this is Jordan," Alicia said softly. "He's an old friend of Mommy's." Jamie, shy but curious, lifted a hand in greeting. Jordan's heart pounded so loudly he felt sure the boy could hear it. He forced a small smile. "Hi, Jamie." "Hi," the boy said, fiddling with the small toy car Sophie had given him. Jordan longed to scoop the child into a hug, to do something paternal, but it felt premature. Instead, he settled for a gentle pat on Jamie's shoulder. That brief moment of contact sent a jolt through him. He caught Alicia's eye, seeing her guarded expression waver as though she was quietly moved. Before Jordan could speak further, his phone buzzed. His driver, presumably. He ignored it. Business could wait. For the first time in his life, something else took precedence. Alicia, noticing his hesitation, said quietly, "You should go. You have obligations." "We can talk more soon, if that's what you want." Jordan rose, nodding. "I'll call you, I promise." She handed him a business card, her personal cell phone scrawled in pen on the back. He slipped it into his wallet, half dazed. As he walked away, suitcase in hand, he felt like a man who had just stepped off a cliff's edge. Yet strangely, he sensed that perhaps falling was the only way to finally learn what lay beyond the walls he'd built around himself. He looked over his shoulder once, catching sight of Jamie looking up at Alicia with trust in his eyes. Jordan closed his own, inhaling deeply, and walked into the swirl of people, knowing that nothing in his carefully guarded world would ever be the same. Jordan found himself in a small airport cafe with Alicia, the clamor of arrivals and departures a dull roar beyond the glass walls. Jamie and Sophie waited at a nearby table, the boy intermittently peeking in their direction. A single cup of coffee sat untouched before Jordan, his mind spinning with questions he couldn't fully articulate. Alicia looked as composed as she could manage, yet her trembling hand around her latte betrayed just how significant this moment was. She cleared her throat, glancing toward Jamie. "I discovered I was pregnant a few weeks after that conference," she began, voice subdued. "It was a shock. I tried contacting you, but you'd changed your number. I even asked around, but we didn't share close mutual friends. After a while, I realized I'd have to do this alone." Jordan's jaw tightened. "I wasn't running away, Alicia. If I'd known—" "I believe you," she cut in gently, eyes dark with a mix of hurt and understanding. "But it doesn't change the fact that I went through the pregnancy, childbirth, and 4 years of raising Jamie on my own. My parents helped, and so did my friend Teresa. I have a supportive network, but it's not the same as having both parents." Jordan wrestled with guilt. He'd built an empire, priding himself on checking every detail, missing nothing crucial in his deals. Yet here he was, blindsided by the most important detail of all. "So, you named him Jamie?" he asked, voice cracking. A faint smile curved Alicia's lips. "James Robert Hughes. But I often call him Jamie. He's bright, creative, and he loves building things. That's probably from you." Jordan stared down at his hands, remembering how, as a boy, he would stack wooden blocks for hours, losing himself in imaginary skyscrapers. The thought that his own son might share that curiosity brought a stinging behind his eyes he couldn't quite dismiss. He braced himself, recalling his father's stern face, the disapproval he faced for every minor misstep. "I want to do the right thing," Jordan said, voice soft, "but I don't even know where to start." Alicia's eyes flicked to Jamie, then back to Jordan. "I'm not demanding money or an instant father-son bond. Jamie barely knows you exist. This situation is new for him too. What matters is that we figure out how, or if, you want to be in his life. He deserves clarity and stability." Jordan nodded, words tangled in his throat. He remembered the day his own mother left. His father never spoke of it, leaving a cavern of unanswered questions that haunted Jordan into adulthood. The last thing he wanted was for Jamie to carry a similar sense of abandonment. "So where do we go from here?" Jordan asked, forcing himself to meet her gaze. Alicia exhaled slowly. "Let's begin with a conversation. If you want to spend time with Jamie, get to know him, then we can set up some arrangements. Visits, calls, whatever works for both of us. But Jordan, I need your full commitment. Jamie can't be an afterthought. If you come in and out of his life, it'll only hurt him. He opened his mouth to protest, but then realized her demand was fair. Being a father required more than a fleeting sense of responsibility. I'm ready to prioritize him, he said, sounding more confident than he felt. I can't pretend I have all the answers, but I want to try. A hint of relief brightened Alicia's features. She gestured for Sophie and Jamie to join them. Jamie approached, clutching a small chocolate bar. The boy peered up at Jordan, curiosity and caution evident in his green eyes. Alicia gently placed a hand on Jamie's shoulder. "Sweetie, this is my friend Jordan. He might—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "He's going to spend some time with us today, okay?" Jamie eyed Jordan. "Will you show me another magic trick?" he asked softly. It was such a simple request, yet Jordan felt a lump form in his throat. "If you want," he said, managing a crooked smile. Jamie nodded, inching closer. Alicia and Sophie exchanged glances. For a moment, an awkward silence settled, but it wasn't unkind. It was the hush of possibilities forming. Jordan inhaled, summoning the fortitude he used to close deals, only this time the stakes felt infinitely higher. "I have a few hours before I need to check in at my hotel," he ventured. "Would you let me take you both to lunch, or—" "Wherever Jamie likes to eat?" Alicia shared a look with Sophie, and then nodded. "That would be nice. We can talk more along the way." Jamie beamed, eager for whatever adventure this promised. Jordan rose, collecting his briefcase with a tighter grip than usual. He didn't know precisely how to navigate fatherhood, but he knew he couldn't walk away. Whether it was caution or courage pushing him forward, he sensed the first real shift in his life's trajectory. Together, they left the cafe, stepping back into the hubbub of the airport, where Jordan suspected the real turbulence of his heart had only just begun. Outside the airport, the afternoon sun cast long rays across the busy pickup lanes. Jordan squinted as he surveyed the lines of yellow taxis waiting at the curb. Normally, he'd locate his private driver and head straight to a towering Manhattan office building, but his life had just taken a wildly different turn. He pulled out his phone, noticing a string of messages from his personal assistant, Vanessa Pearson. There were urgent reminders about a high-profile meeting downtown, a multi-million-dollar land acquisition. Under typical circumstances, Jordan would be on a conference call, finalizing the pitch deck. Today, though, he found himself ignoring the notifications as he turned toward Alicia and Sophie, who stood with Jamie between them. "I have a car waiting," he said. "Let me make a call first." He stepped aside, dialing Vanessa. When she answered, her voice trembled with carefully contained worry. "Mr. Myers, the investors are gathering at the Midtown office in an hour," Vanessa reminded him. "They're expecting you to walk them through the development forecast. Shall I confirm you'll be there?" Jordan drew a breath, feeling his heart thrum with a mixture of panic and resolve. The old Jordan would never abandon such a critical meeting, yet the old Jordan had never faced the reality of having a 4-year-old son before. "Vanessa," he said quietly, "reschedule it. Everything for the next 48 hours. I need it cleared. I'll take personal calls, but no meetings. Make my apologies and arrange alternative solutions if needed." Silence stretched on the line, thick with disbelief. Then, "Are you sure, sir? This meeting is key to securing final approval from—" "I'm positive." Jordan's tone was final. "Reschedule, delegate, whatever it takes. I'll be in touch." He ended the call before he could second-guess himself. Alicia regarded him with mild surprise. "You didn't have to do that," she murmured. "I know how important your work is." Jordan slid his phone into his jacket pocket. "Nothing is more important than figuring this out," he said, glancing at Jamie. The realization settled in that he meant every word. A soft smile grazed Alicia's lips, though she still appeared wary. She turned to Sophie. "Could you head back to my apartment? I'll take care of Jamie." Sophie nodded, relieved to step away from the tension. After hugging Jamie goodbye, she caught a cab of her own. Now it was just the three of them. Jordan, Alicia, and the child whose presence altered the fabric of Jordan's life. They piled into Jordan's waiting town car. Jamie, wide-eyed at the plush leather seats, immediately fidgeted with every button he could reach. Alicia, an air of maternal discipline about her, gently guided the boy's hand away from the radio controls. "We're going to a restaurant, but remember your manners, okay?" Jamie nodded enthusiastically. Jordan watched with a mixture of amusement and uncertainty. He was used to being in charge, yet around Jamie, he felt like a clumsy outsider stepping into someone else's daily rhythm. "So," Jordan said as the car pulled away, "any preferences for lunch?" Alicia glanced at Jamie. "He loves simple things. Burgers, fries, anything that might come with a little toy on the side." Jordan managed a wry grin. "I think we can handle that. There's a family-friendly place not far from my hotel." On the drive, Alicia showed Jamie the view through the window, colorful billboards, the looming skyline. Jamie's excitement was infectious. Now and then, he'd point to a building, marveling at its height. Jordan felt a curious warmth, recalling his own childhood fascination with architecture. Leaning back against the seat, Jordan briefly closed his eyes. What would happen when the initial wonder faded and the real demands of fatherhood set in? He didn't want to be the distant figure who only showed up bearing gifts. He was determined to do more than that, though he wasn't sure how. They arrived at a casual restaurant with bright decor and a play area in one corner. It was a world Jordan never frequented, but Alicia guided him in gently. The hostess smiled at Jamie, leading them to a booth that smelled of French fries and ketchup. Once seated, Jamie eagerly grabbed the children's menu, flipping through pictures of cartoon animals. Alicia and Jordan exchanged a glance across the table. Her gaze conveyed a wary hope. He asked, gently, "How has it been for you, balancing your career at Horizon Tech, raising him alone?" Alicia shrugged, swirling the ice in her water. "Challenging, rewarding. Lonely sometimes, but I'm proud of how far we've come." She paused, meeting his eyes. "I'm not sure how this co-parenting thing will look. My life in New York is established, and yours is in Boston." Jordan nodded. "I'll figure it out." He wasn't certain what that meant logistically, but the conviction in his voice was real. Before Alicia could reply, Jamie tugged at Jordan's sleeve. "Look!" The child pointed at an illustrated puzzle on the menu. "Can you help me with this?" It was a simple maze, but the request felt monumental. Jordan rarely had anyone rely on him for such small, everyday things. He swallowed a lump in his throat and nodded, leaning closer. In the back of his mind, a swirl of concerns about his board of directors, pending deals, and scheduling nightmares loomed. Yet for now, he pushed them all aside. Right here, in this bright booth with Alicia and Jamie, he was taking the first tentative step into a life beyond the meticulously calculated boundaries he'd once guarded so fiercely. Later that same afternoon, Alicia suggested a walk in Central Park. Jordan agreed, though he felt a nervous flutter in his stomach at the thought of navigating crowds with a small child. Still, if he wanted to know Jamie, he needed to see him in his own element, laughter, exploration, and all the chaos that came with being 4 years old. They entered the park near one of the playgrounds, where children raced around slides and monkey bars. The sight was a stark contrast to the polished corridors Jordan typically strolled, discussing profit margins and architectural models. He felt conspicuous in his tailored suit, but Alicia assured him that casual clothes or not, kids wouldn't care. Jamie rushed ahead, enthralled by the colorful swings and climbing structures. Alicia kept a watchful eye from a nearby bench, while Jordan hovered awkwardly, unsure if he should step in or hang back. "Go on," Alicia said gently, nodding toward Jamie. "He's proud to show what he can do." Jordan nodded, stepping closer to the playground. Jamie gripped a ladder's metal rungs, casting a quick grin at Jordan over his shoulder. "Look how high I can climb." Jordan's heart lurched as the boy ascended. It was only a small climb, but the paternal instinct to protect flared inside him. "Be careful," he called, voice strained. Jamie waved nonchalantly and kept climbing. When he reached the top, he slid down a plastic spiral slide, landing on his feet with a triumphant laugh. Jordan exhaled, a wave of relief washing over him. He found himself smiling, an unguarded, genuine smile that felt both strange and comforting. "You okay?" Alicia teased as she joined him. "You look more nervous than he does." Jordan loosened his tie with a sheepish chuckle. "I can negotiate multi-million-dollar deals, but this," he gestured to the children shrieking in delight, "this is out of my depth." Alicia's expression softened. "You'll figure it out. Parenting is mostly learning by doing." She hesitated, then placed a hand on his arm. "Thanks for trying. I know it's overwhelming." Jordan swallowed, feeling the weight of her gratitude. He surveyed Jamie darting from one play area to another, chasing new friends he'd just made. A memory flickered. When Jordan was about Jamie's age, his own father never took him to a park, always delegating such tasks to a nanny or family housekeeper. Jordan realized he didn't want that for Jamie. He wanted to be present. They found a bench under the dappled shade of a large elm tree. Jamie, noticing them sit, briefly sprinted over to show a scrape on his knee where he'd stumbled. "It hurts," he complained, tears brimming. Jordan's heart jumped in concern. "Do we need a bandage?" he asked, fumbling for a handkerchief he kept in his pocket. He'd never tended to a child's wound before. Alicia crouched down, examining the minor scrape. "I think he'll live," she said, offering Jamie a sympathetic smile. "We'll clean it when we get back. For now, do you want to sit with us?" Jamie shook his head, brushing away tears. "I want to play more." Then he looked at Jordan. "Is that okay?" Jordan felt a slight catch in his throat. The boy was seeking his permission, something so natural yet extraordinary to Jordan. "Yeah," he managed, nodding. Go on." Once Jamie darted off, Alicia rose to sit on the bench. Jordan followed suit, removing his jacket. He realized how stifled he felt, wearing his usual corporate armor in a place so open and full of life. "So," Alicia began softly, "I should tell you more about how I've been juggling things. After you left Chicago, I continued to work my way up in Horizon Tech's finance department. My parents, Robert and Susan, helped with Jamie. They moved closer after he was born, and Teresa, she's my best friend since college, became his pediatrician and emotional support for me. I've been lucky, but it's been intense." Jordan absorbed her words, a twinge of envy flickering inside him. She had a network, people who rallied around her. He had built a fortress of business colleagues, but few genuine confidants. "You've done well," he said, glancing at Jamie. "He's a good kid." "That's all you—" Alicia's eyes flicked to Jordan with a sudden warmth. "Thank you. It means a lot coming from you." Jordan shifted on the bench. "I want to make this work. I just don't know how. My life is in Boston. The company is my responsibility. My father and the board are always watching for any slip-up." He rubbed the back of his neck, tension coiling there. I never learned how to juggle personal attachments with business. It's been strictly business for so long. Alicia nodded in understanding. We can figure it out, step by step. She glanced at Jamie, now laughing on a slide. He's worth it. Jordan followed her gaze, a surge of protectiveness coursing through him. He suddenly understood, at least in part, the love Alicia must have channeled toward Jamie every day. The thought both awed and unnerved him. "Yeah," he whispered. "He is." They fell quiet, listening to children's chatter, the rustle of leaves overhead, and the distant hum of traffic beyond the park's boundaries. Jordan felt, for a fleeting moment, a sense of peace. In this unfamiliar realm of playgrounds and scraped knees, he was taking his first steps into a life that challenged everything he thought he knew about himself. The sun was setting over Manhattan when Jordan and Alicia decided to leave Central Park, Jamie skipping beside them with sticky hands from a hastily devoured ice cream cone. Their afternoon had slipped by in a haze of playground laughter and cautious conversation, yet it had only scratched the surface of the discussions they needed to have. Back at Alicia's apartment building, a modest but welcoming high-rise in a lively neighborhood, the trio paused in the lobby. Families with strollers passed, and a friendly doorman tipped his hat. Jordan felt another pang of displacement. He belonged to a realm of penthouse suites and exclusive clubs, but this cozy environment radiated warmth he'd rarely encountered. Alicia tapped the elevator button, turning to Jordan. "Would you like to come up for a bit? We can talk about schedules, visits. How we move forward." He hesitated, aware that stepping into Alicia's personal space felt like crossing an invisible threshold. But if he was serious about being Jamie's father, he needed to do it wholeheartedly. "Sure," he said quietly, offering a small smile to Jamie, who leaned his head against Alicia's hip. They rode the elevator to the 10th floor, the hum of machinery filling the silence. Alicia's apartment was bright and inviting, with walls adorned by cheerful artwork, some of which were obviously Jamie's. A rack near the door held tiny sneakers and a pair of Alicia's professional heels side by side, a testament to her dual roles as mother and executive. Jamie rushed to his bedroom, eager to show off his toys. Alicia gave Jordan a quick tour of the living area, pointing out framed photos of her parents, Robert and Susan, and a few candid shots of Jamie. In one, he grinned widely, missing a front tooth, clutching a stuffed dinosaur. Jordan found himself smiling back at the image, moved by a sense of longing for lost time. Alicia gestured to the couch. "Sit, make yourself comfortable." She disappeared into the kitchen, returning with a glass of water. "I'm not sure if you drink coffee or tea at this hour." "Water's fine," Jordan said, sinking into the plush cushions. He surveyed the shelves lined with children's books and a few finance manuals, a microcosm of Alicia's life, balancing maternal devotion with corporate ambition. She took a seat across from him, her expression pensive. "So, let's talk about the practical aspects. Jamie has school, daycare, doctor's appointments, you name it. My work schedule can be flexible if I coordinate with my boss, but it's still demanding." Jordan nodded. "Mine is demanding too, but I can delegate some responsibilities to my partner, Philip Grayson, if needed. I'm willing to travel more often to New York. Or perhaps we can figure out weekends, holidays, that kind of thing." Alicia smiled, relieved by his willingness. "Exactly. And for what it's worth, we don't have to iron out every detail tonight. Just knowing you're committed helps. Jamie will have questions, though, about who you are and what our relationship is." Jordan ran a hand through his hair. "I can't promise I'll have perfect answers, but I'll be honest with him, as much as a 4-year-old can understand." They heard a sudden thump from Jamie's bedroom, followed by an indignant wail. Alicia dashed to check on him, Jordan close behind. They found Jamie sprawled on the rug, apparently having tripped over a pile of blocks. Alicia scooped him up, consoling him quietly, while Jordan crouched beside them, concern etched into his features. "Are you okay, buddy?" Jordan asked gently, steadying Jamie's shoulder. Jamie sniffled. "I'm fine," he mumbled, tears still glistening in his eyes. Then he eyed Jordan. "You live in Boston. Are you going home now?" The boy's question was innocent, but it carried a weight that fell squarely on Jordan's heart. He realized that every plan, every promise, would mean little if he kept vanishing back to Boston. "Not tonight," he said, glancing at Alicia for confirmation. "I'm staying in a hotel nearby for a couple of days, so I can see you again tomorrow if you'd like that." Jamie's lips curved into a tentative smile. "Okay," he whispered. "You can see my new puzzle." Jordan felt an almost overwhelming rush of gratitude that Jamie was open to him. He wasn't sure how long it would take to earn the child's trust fully, but this was a start. Once Jamie was settled back with his blocks, Alicia stood in the hallway, arms folded. "He likes you, Jordan," she murmured, a mixture of relief and apprehension in her tone. "But there are no shortcuts here. Parenting has rules that aren't written down, especially when you're coming in at this stage." Jordan nodded solemnly. He thought of the father who raised him, who believed in discipline above all else, who never showed a moment of warmth. Jordan vowed to be different. "I'll learn," he said quietly. Alicia's gaze softened. "I know you will." They returned to the living room. Outside, the city lights shimmered in the twilight. Jordan's phone vibrated in his pocket, likely messages piling up from his staff. But for once, he let it ring unanswered. Here, in this quiet apartment, he was beginning to discover a new set of priorities. Ones that could not be calculated by profit margins or projected growth charts. They were the unspoken rules of family and belonging, and he felt both unprepared and strangely determined to follow them. The next day, Jordan arrived at Alicia's apartment armed with a simple bouquet of lilies for her and a small puzzle for Jamie. As the door swung open, he was met not just by Alicia's warm, if hesitant, smile, but also by two figures behind her, a grey-haired couple with kind, inquisitive eyes. "These are my parents," Alicia introduced, "Robert and Susan Hughes." Jordan's grip tightened on the bouquet. He'd braced himself to meet Alicia's family eventually, but he hadn't anticipated it happening so soon. Robert, tall and broad-shouldered, regarded Jordan with a polite nod, though his eyes were guarded. Susan, a petite woman with a gentle demeanor, offered a careful smile. "Come in," Susan said quietly, stepping aside. Jordan made his way into the living area, noticing that Alicia had rearranged the furniture slightly to create a cozy circle of chairs. Jamie was in his bedroom, no doubt sensing a serious adult conversation brewing. The tension in the air prickled at Jordan's nerves. He handed Susan the lilies. "It's nice to meet you both," he managed, aiming for a polite tone. "Alicia's told me how supportive you've been." She accepted the flowers with a quiet, "Thank you," while Robert studied Jordan openly. "We've heard a lot about you as well," he said, his voice deep. "Though not always from Alicia's words. Gossip travels in financial circles." Jordan swallowed. No doubt they harbored some resentment that he had been absent for 4 years, unaware of his own son. "I'm sorry," he said, meeting Robert's gaze directly. "I had no idea Alicia was pregnant, or I would have—" "Let's all sit," Alicia interjected gently, gesturing to the chairs. Once they were settled, she placed a hand on her father's arm. "Dad, I told you, Jordan didn't know." "It's complicated, but I believe him." Susan slipped a vase from a cupboard, arranging the lilies. "What's important now is Jamie's well-being. We don't want him confused or hurt." Jordan nodded, posture rigid. "I agree. That's why I'm here in New York, reworking my schedule to be involved." Robert's stern expression softened slightly. Words are one thing, Mr. Myers. Actions are another. You'll forgive us for being protective. Of course, Jordan said. In his entire corporate career, he'd never felt so on the spot, not even during the toughest board meetings. I intend to show you I'm serious about Jamie. Susan stepped forward and touched Robert's shoulder, as if calming him. Then she turned to Jordan. Sometimes these unexpected reunions can be a blessing. We all want what's best for the child, and maybe for Alicia too. Jordan flicked his gaze to Alicia, who offered a small, appreciative nod. He felt relief that at least one parent seemed open to forging a path forward. Before the conversation could continue, small footsteps padded into the living room. Jamie peered around the corner, a toy car in hand. "Grandpa, Grandma," he said, eyeing the serious circle. "What's happening?" Alicia smiled, beckoning him over. "We're just talking, sweetheart. Do you remember Jordan?" Jamie nodded, inching closer. "He bought me a puzzle." Jordan crouched down, offering the unopened box. "Want to see if we can figure it out together later?" Jamie's eyes lit up. "Okay." He glanced at Robert and Susan, and then scurried back to his room with the puzzle clutched tightly. Robert sighed, leaning back in his chair. "The boy does seem taken with you. We just ask that you don't disappear if things become difficult." Jordan set his jaw. "I won't." The thought stirred a memory of his own father's aloof presence. He vowed silently not to repeat that pattern. Alicia stood, breaking the tension, with an announcement that she'd ordered pizza. "Mom, Dad, please stay. Let's make this a normal family afternoon, if that's possible." Susan placed the vase of lilies on a side table, smiling gently at Jordan. "A normal family afternoon sounds perfect." They settled into a hesitant but earnest rhythm, nibbling slices of pizza and sipping cold soda, while Jamie darted in and out of the living room, excited to have so many adults in one space. Jordan fielded questions about his company, his upbringing, and how he planned to juggle visits to New York. He answered frankly, acknowledging he didn't have all the solutions yet, but was actively working on them. As the afternoon wore on, Robert's demeanor thawed. He and Jordan discovered a shared interest in antique cars. Susan listened to Jordan's stories of real estate triumphs with genuine curiosity, occasionally asking about the philanthropic aspects of his projects. Alicia watched her parents warming to Jordan with quiet relief, though caution lingered in her eyes. By the time Robert and Susan left, it was nearing dusk. Alicia walked them to the door, thanking them for being open-minded. Susan turned once more to Jordan. "We'll be in touch, and Jordan, thank you for the flowers." Jordan nodded, gratitude tugging at his chest. He knew he had just met two unlikely allies who could help him navigate this new world. As the door closed behind them, he exhaled, noticing Alicia's almost imperceptible smile. Though there was still a long way to go, he felt a faint sense of victory. For once, the alliances he formed weren't about profit or power. They were about building trust in the eyes of a family that had every reason to doubt him. 3 days later, Jordan found himself pacing Alicia's living room with restless energy. Alicia had invited her best friend Teresa Collins for dinner, a casual get-together meant to introduce Jordan more fully into Jamie's life. Jamie, enthralled by the prospect of dessert, was counting the minutes until Teresa's arrival. Jordan, however, caught a glimpse of wariness in Alicia's demeanor whenever she mentioned Teresa. He gathered that Teresa, a pediatrician who'd helped raise Jamie's spirits through teething, colds, and toddler tantrums, was fiercely protective of both mother and child. When the door buzzed, Jamie squealed and ran to press the intercom button. Teresa arrived with a bright smile for Alicia and Jamie, then turned a critical gaze on Jordan. She had sharp, discerning eyes and wore a stylish black blazer that suggested a certain no-nonsense approach to life. After hugging Alicia, she reached over to ruffle Jamie's hair, then shook Jordan's hand curtly. "So," Teresa said, glancing between Alicia and Jordan, "you're the father who appeared out of nowhere." Jordan's jaw tightened, though he tried to remain polite. "It's more complicated than that." Teresa arched an eyebrow. "I'm sure." Sensing the tension, Alicia ushered them to the dining table. She'd prepared a simple but hearty meal: roast chicken, fresh vegetables, and a basket of warm bread. Jamie took his seat, eyes drifting toward the chocolate cake Teresa had brought. The table was set with everyday plates rather than Alicia's usual polished style, an effort to keep the atmosphere relaxed. Dinner began with polite small talk. Teresa asked Jordan about his business in Boston, the real estate developments, and how he managed the company. Jordan answered meticulously, trying to sound friendly but not defensive. Each response felt like an exam, with Teresa's unwavering gaze silently probing for any sign of insincerity. Jamie tried to entertain them with a story about preschool, but halfway through, he knocked over his cup of juice. Liquid spread across the table, soaking the edge of the breadbasket. Jordan shot to his feet, grabbing napkins to mop up the mess. Alicia calmly moved the soggy bread aside, and Teresa pulled Jamie away from the spill. "It's okay, buddy. Accidents happen," Alicia said, her voice soothing. However, the minor chaos seemed to set the evening on edge. Jamie, embarrassed, began whining that he was hungry for cake. Alicia insisted they clean up first, while Teresa hovered protectively. Jordan's attempt to help was met by a skeptical glance from Teresa, who took the wet napkins from his hand. Once the table was in order, they resumed dinner, though Jamie's mood shifted from embarrassment to frustration. He pouted, refusing to eat his vegetables. Alicia tried coaxing him, but he folded his arms and shook his head. Teresa shot Jordan a pointed look, as if to say, "Well, you're the father. Do something." Jordan cleared his throat, leaning closer to Jamie. "Hey, bud, how about we compromise? 2 bites of vegetables, and then we can talk about dessert." Jamie scowled. "Mommy usually says I have to eat all my vegetables." Alicia smirked slightly, though Teresa's lips tightened. Jordan felt caught in the crossfire of uncertain parenting rules. He sighed. "Okay. Then how about you try your best? And if you're still not hungry, we'll figure something else out." The boy kicked the chair leg, tears brimming. "I don't want them." Teresa stood abruptly. "I'll take him to wash his hands," she announced, steering Jamie away from the table. Once they were out of earshot, she turned to Jordan, crossing her arms. "He's 4, and he doesn't understand who you are yet. You can't waltz in and change the rules." "You need to stay consistent with Alicia's approach." Alicia started to protest, but Teresa's sharp gaze silenced her. Jordan inhaled, acknowledging Teresa's point, if somewhat grudgingly. "You're right," he said. "I don't have all the answers. I'm trying." Teresa's eyes narrowed. "Try harder. This isn't just about being a fun visitor. He needs stability, discipline, and consistency." Then she softened, her voice losing some of its bite. "I've been there for every fever, every tantrum. I won't let him get hurt because someone got cold feet." Alicia gently touched Teresa's arm, her tone conciliatory. "He's not running away, Teresa. He cancelled important meetings to be here. He's doing his best." Teresa exhaled, nodding slowly. "Fine. Let's see how he handles the next few weeks." Jordan stayed silent. Part of him bristled at the insinuation that he might flee. Another part recognized Teresa's position. She was just protecting Jamie. Once Teresa returned to the living room with Jamie, dinner resumed with uneasy politeness. Jamie ate a few half-hearted bites of vegetables, then brightened when Alicia finally sliced into the chocolate cake. Jordan tried to lighten the mood by remarking on how he hoped to see a Red Sox game with Jamie someday. But Teresa only offered a curt smile. When the evening ended, Teresa left with a stiff goodbye. Alicia sank into a chair, shaking her head. "I'm sorry. She's not usually so hostile, but she's known about Jamie's father being absent for years, and she thinks she's protecting us." Jordan understood, though it stung. "I can't blame her. I just hope she'll see I'm not like my own father, detached and cold. I'm here to stay." Alicia exhaled, resting her hand on his. "In time, maybe she will." Jordan glanced toward Jamie's room, where the boy had retreated in a sulky mood. This was only the start. He'd have to prove himself over and over again, not just to Teresa, but to Alicia, her parents, and most of all, Jamie. As he gathered his coat to leave, he silently vowed not to let them down. Jordan Myers had always believed in ruthless efficiency, leveraging time, maximizing opportunities, and never letting personal matters intrude on business. Yet the weeks following his discovery of fatherhood blurred those once strict boundaries. He found himself commuting back and forth between Boston and New York, so often that flight crews began to recognize him by name. Every Monday morning, he returned to Boston to monitor the Myers Development Group headquarters. Meetings, site visits, and strategy sessions filled his schedule, and he tackled them with customary precision. By midweek, he was boarding another plane for New York, determined to carve out precious hours with Jamie and Alicia. It wasn't the most sustainable arrangement, but it was all he could manage in the short term. At first, the staff at his Boston office exchanged puzzled looks at this new routine. Ryan Thompson, his sharp assistant executive, seemed especially curious. "Sir," Ryan ventured one afternoon, finding Jordan in his corner office, "I've noticed you've changed your travel patterns. Is there something we should know about expansion plans in New York?" Jordan tightened his jaw. "I'm just exploring possibilities," he replied vaguely. "Focus on your responsibilities here." In truth, Jordan was juggling two lives, nights in Boston that ended with spreadsheets, and days in Manhattan filled with playground strolls, daycare pickups, and the learning curve of fatherhood. He often arrived at Alicia's apartment still wearing his tailored suits, then found himself reading storybooks on the couch, his jacket crumpled beside him. Though this new rhythm left him exhausted, Jordan discovered small victories along the way. The first time he managed to help Jamie with an art project for preschool, he felt an unexpected burst of pride. The moment he cancelled a major board dinner so he could attend a Dad's Day event at Jamie's school, Alicia's astonished smile made the sacrifice worthwhile. Yet the demands of his position were unrelenting. One Thursday, he phoned Alicia to say he'd land in New York by noon, only to have an urgent conference call crop up at the last minute, forcing him to change flights. By the time he arrived that evening, Alicia's cautious disappointment was evident in her eyes. Jamie, too, wore a puzzled frown, asking, "Why weren't you here?" The sting of letting his son down pierced Jordan's heart. Despite these difficulties, Jordan remained determined to prove he was more than an occasional visitor. On a crisp Friday, he whisked Jamie away to a construction expo in Midtown Manhattan, showing him scaled models of skyscrapers and giving him child-friendly explanations of real estate developments. Jamie's wonder thrilled Jordan, reminding him of the youthful excitement he once felt for designing buildings. Back in Boston, the board of Myers Development Group began to wonder why Jordan's usual single-minded focus had shifted. Whispers circulated that perhaps he was pursuing a new project on the sly or orchestrating a secret partnership. Jordan avoided revealing the truth, aware that corporate scrutiny could complicate an already delicate situation. Even his longtime friend and business partner, Philip Grayson, expressed concern. "We can't afford for you to go AWOL at critical moments," Philip said one afternoon in Jordan's office, though his tone held more sympathy than reprimand. "Are you sure everything's okay? You've been distant lately." Jordan hesitated. Philip had always been his confidant, a person who understood him better than most. Finally, Jordan relented. "I found out I have a son," he admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "He's 4. I'm trying to be a real father to him." Stunned silence filled the room. Then Philip let out a low whistle. "Well, that explains a lot." He clapped Jordan on the shoulder. "How can I help?" They spoke at length, Jordan describing his whirlwind routine, the guilt when he missed something important in Jamie's life, and the subtle tension that remained between him and Alicia. Philip listened intently, promising to shoulder more of the corporate burden if that would allow Jordan some breathing room. A few days later, Jordan arrived in New York, stepping off the plane with bleary eyes and a carry-on stuffed not just with work files, but also Jamie's favorite toy cars he'd accidentally left behind in Boston. Each trip tested Jordan's stamina, but also strengthened his resolve. He began to think about more permanent solutions, perhaps a new office in Manhattan that would keep him close to Jamie. Such notions remained only half-formed ideas in his mind, overshadowed by the immediate demands of fatherhood and corporate leadership. Yet each time Jordan watched his son race across the playground or proudly show him a finger painting, he felt the pull toward a future he once never believed he wanted. He simply had to survive the present juggling act to make it there. The following weekend, Jordan decided to visit his father, Walter Myers, at the old estate on the outskirts of Boston. The massive property held memories both bittersweet and unsettling. Jordan's mother's laugh echoing in the halls before she abandoned them, and the rigid upbringing that shaped him into the man he was today. Walter, now 78, was sitting in his study when Jordan arrived. Tall shelves stuffed with leather-bound volumes framed the older man like a silent jury. He wore a tailored vest and a sharp gaze that no age seemed capable of dulling. Jordan cleared his throat. "Father, thank you for agreeing to see me." Walter arched a brow. "You're my son. I suppose I can give you a few minutes, though I'm quite busy." Jordan nearly scoffed. He knew Walter rarely left the house now, delegating corporate influence through proxies and phone calls. Nonetheless, Jordan pressed on, his heart thundering. "I've learned that I have a son. He's 4 years old." Walter's expression remained eerily calm. He folded his hands. "Indeed. And how did this come to pass without your knowledge?" Jordan explained Alicia's name, the missed connections, and the coincidental airport encounter. He spoke of Jamie's birthmark, his own newfound determination, even the fledgling affection he felt for the boy. Walter listened with a stone-faced quiet. When Jordan finished, Walter leaned back in his armchair, exhaling through pursed lips. "You'll want a paternity test, I assume." Jordan stiffened. "I don't think that's necessary. I trust Alicia, and I can see he's mine." Walter's mouth tightened. "Trust, Jordan. A foolish notion, if you ask me. You have an empire to protect. And now you say you'll jeopardize it all to chase this fatherly dream." Heat flared in Jordan's cheeks. "Jeopardize? He's my son. This isn't some whim." Walter tapped a manicured fingernail on the armrest. "I raised you to be practical. If there's even a chance he isn't yours, you must confirm it. And if he is—" He sighed, voice cold. "Then I suppose we'll have to manage the scandal." Jordan felt old resentment surge. "There's no scandal in being a father," he snapped. "I'd like him to know his grandfather, but not like this, not with your cynicism." Walter's stare was piercing. "I did what I believed was best, raising you alone after your mother left. Emotions only hamper logical decisions. And what do you think you're doing now, throwing logic to the wind?" Jordan took a slow breath, recalling how lonely his childhood had been. The hushed dinners, the strict tutors. He didn't want Jamie to experience that. "Yes," he said finally, voice shaking, "I'm embracing emotion, because I won't be the father you were. I won't let Jamie feel like an inconvenience. I came here hoping you'd show some interest in meeting him." Walter's gaze flickered, but his tone remained guarded. "If he's truly your child, I'll consider it. Until then, do as you will. Just remember, sentiment won't run a corporation." Jordan clenched his fists, swallowing a retort. Their conversation was already teetering on the brink of confrontation. "Thank you for your time," he managed, voice clipped. "I'll be in touch." He left the study, heart hammering. Anger coursed through him, but also a strange pity for Walter. The old man had trapped himself in a fortress of logic, so terrified of vulnerability that he'd lost the capacity to show love. Jordan vowed to do better, for Jamie's sake. Later that evening, he phoned Alicia from his penthouse, still simmering with unresolved tension. She listened quietly as he recounted the exchange with his father. When he finished, she sighed. "I'm sorry it went that way." "It must have been hard." Jordan stared at the city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. "Harder than I expected. But it doesn't change anything about us, about Jamie." "Does it make you doubt your decision to be involved?" Alicia asked gently. "Not at all," Jordan answered firmly. "It only makes me more certain I'm doing the right thing." Alicia paused, and he heard the faint sound of Jamie laughing in the background. "Good. Because Jamie's been drawing pictures of you," she said softly. "He's calling you Dad." Jordan closed his eyes against a sudden sting of tears he wouldn't dare show anyone else. "I'll come to New York again in a few days," he promised, voice subdued. "I won't miss his life because of my father's opinions." As the call ended, Jordan stood in the silent penthouse. Family ghosts haunted every corner. His mother's absence, his father's rigid expectations, but for the first time, he felt strong enough to break that cycle. If Walter refused to embrace his grandson, that was his loss. Jordan intended to ensure Jamie never felt the same hollow ache that shaped his own childhood. A crisis erupted at the Myers Development Group just when Jordan believed he'd found a fragile equilibrium. A multi-million-dollar project in Boston, an ambitious waterfront complex, hit a major snag in its foundation work. Structural engineers warned of potential complications with the soil composition, threatening costly delays and legal headaches. Jordan's phone buzzed incessantly that morning with urgent messages from site managers and anxious board members. He had planned to return to New York in time to take Jamie to a much-anticipated baseball game, the boys' first in-person sports event. Jordan had the tickets tucked in his wallet as a reminder of his promise. But as he stood amid the chaos of the construction site, wearing a hard hat and gripping a bundle of revised blueprints, he realized the crisis demanded his full attention. Contractors yelled over roaring machinery, and the project manager frantically explained the soil issue that risked sinking part of the structure if they pressed on without a redesign. Jordan's expression was grim. "We need to halt further work on that section. Implement the revised plan immediately," he said. "No cutting corners. I'll handle the board if they complain about the budget." His phone pinged with a message from Alicia. "We're at the ballpark entrance." "Jamie's so excited. Are you close?" Jordan's chest tightened, dread coiling in his gut. He glanced at the site manager, frazzled, waiting for further instructions, and realized there was no way he could leave now and make it to New York in time. He inhaled sharply before typing a reply. "I'm so sorry. Stuck in an emergency at work. I can't make it." The guilt was immediate and crushing. He could picture Jamie's hopeful face, that childlike exuberance at the idea of seeing a real baseball game. It was a moment Jordan had built up himself, promising father-son bonding. He saw the disappointed look Alicia would wear too. She never expected Jordan to be perfect, but each missed milestone chipped away at the fragile trust they were building. Over the next 4 hours, Jordan led crisis control, convening emergency meetings, adjusting budgets, consulting additional engineers. By the time he left the site, dusk was falling. He was physically exhausted and mentally drained. He called Alicia from his car, heart pounding. Jamie answered, voice subdued. "Are you still busy, Dad?" Jordan grimaced. Hearing the word Dad stung with guilt. "I'm sorry, buddy," he said softly. "I got caught up in a big problem at my job. Did you have fun at least?" A long pause followed. Then Jamie murmured, "I had fun with Mom, but I was hoping you'd come." Jordan closed his eyes, the disappointment in his son's voice cutting deeper than any business loss. "I know. I'll make it up to you, okay?" "Okay," Jamie said, but there wasn't much conviction. Alicia's gentle voice came on the line moments later, telling Jordan she understood, but that Jamie was hurt. Jordan knew an apology wouldn't fix this. When he finally returned to his office that evening, Philip was waiting, arms folded. "Tough day?" he asked, voice colored with sympathy. Jordan slumped into his chair, nodding. "I feel like I'm failing everyone. The board, the contractors, Jamie, Alicia. I can't be in two places at once." Philip sighed. "We'll handle the crisis together, but you need to figure out how to balance things long term. Right now, it's all patchwork solutions. Might be time to consider a more permanent shift in your base of operations." Jordan stared at the city lights through the office window. The notion of uprooting from Boston felt monumental. This was where his family's legacy began, where he'd built his reputation. Yet the image of Jamie's disappointed face nagged at him. The next day, headlines erupted in the local papers, highlighting the construction setback and insinuating potential negligence. Jordan spent every waking moment quelling investor fears, stabilizing the project's finances, and planning a remedy to keep the venture afloat. He missed calls from Alicia, returning them late at night with a raspy voice and an aching conscience. "I'm just tired," he told her during one such call. "I hate that I let Jamie down." Alicia's tone was somber, yet compassionate. "He'll bounce back, Jordan. But be careful. Kids remember the promises you break." Her words lingered in his mind long after they hung up. No matter the scale of the crisis in Boston, Jordan couldn't escape the fear that by the time he had everything back under control, he might lose the chance to be a meaningful presence in his son's life. Jordan spent days immersed in the waterfront project's turmoil, meeting with engineers, environmental consultants, and city officials. He secured emergency approvals to shift part of the design, aware that every delay meant rising costs and mounting pressure from the board. Yet even in this swirl of corporate firefighting, his thoughts wandered to Jamie and Alicia. Late one evening, Jordan managed to finalize the crucial contracts that would salvage the project. Exhausted but relieved, he boarded a red-eye flight to New York, arriving at Alicia's apartment building well past Jamie's bedtime. He hesitated in the quiet hallway, uncertain if it was too late to knock. At last, he rapped softly on the door. Alicia opened it, dressed in casual nightwear, her hair loose around her shoulders. Surprise flashed in her eyes, followed by a cautious welcome. "I thought you'd stay in Boston a few more days," she murmured, letting him inside. Jordan set his carry-on down, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "I couldn't stand being away any longer. I needed to see both of you." Alicia's expression softened. She gestured for him to follow her into the living room, where the lights were dim. "He's asleep, but you can take a peek." Jordan tread carefully to Jamie's bedroom, cracking the door just enough to glimpse the boy curled up under cartoon-themed sheets. A stuffed dinosaur lay by his side. Jordan's heart clenched with a mix of longing and regret. Quietly closing the door, he returned to the living room, where Alicia waited on the sofa. "You look drained," she said gently, motioning him to sit. "How bad is the project crisis?" Jordan ran a hand through his hair, newly streaked with grey at the temples. potentially catastrophic, but we've patched it for now. I still have a fight ahead with the board to cover the costs." Alicia nodded in understanding. She knew all too well the demands of corporate life, having climbed the ranks at Horizon Tech under similar pressures. Yet she also bore the brunt of Jordan's absences on Jamie's behalf. He exhaled, voice unsteady. "I know I disappointed him. I brought something for him." Jordan reached into his carry-on, pulling out a pint-sized baseball jersey featuring the same team they'd intended to watch. "I was going to give it to him at the game, but—" Alicia accepted the jersey, smoothing a hand over the fabric. "He'll like it. He misses you, Jordan. He's too young to understand work emergencies. He just sees that you promised something and weren't there." A pang of guilt twisted in Jordan's chest. "I can't keep doing this, constantly playing catch-up, missing these milestones." He lowered his gaze, eyes fixed on the floor. "I need a better solution." Alicia studied his face. "Have you thought about relocating, or at least establishing a bigger presence in New York?" Jordan nodded slowly. "Yes. The board resists any massive shift, but I'm considering opening a major branch here. It'd let me be in Jamie's life more consistently." Alicia's lips curved into a hesitant smile. "It makes sense, but it won't be easy. There's the financial strain, the corporate politics, and your father." Jordan snorted. "My father will never approve, but I'm used to that." They settled into a silent lull, the weight of unspoken words filling the space. Finally, Alicia placed the jersey on the coffee table and looked at Jordan intently. "I appreciate how hard you're trying. Just don't burn yourself out in the process or make promises to Jamie you can't keep." Nodding, Jordan gently reached for her hand. It felt strange yet comforting to share this closeness. "I'm sorry for the strain I'm adding to your life," he said softly. "If you need anything, help with daycare fees, groceries, anything, I want to contribute. I don't want you carrying all the burdens." Alicia squeezed his hand before releasing it. "I won't say no to help, but it's not just about finances. He needs you emotionally. You can't buy that with a paycheck." The truth of her words stung, but Jordan was grateful she was honest. "I know," he replied. "I'm here for him. Even if it means flying in at midnight, I'll do it until I can find a permanent fix." Alicia gave him a measured smile. "Okay, let's work on a schedule for the next few weeks. We'll find a routine that gives Jamie stability." They talked for another hour, poring over calendars and potential travel dates. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. By the time Jordan finally drifted off on Alicia's living room couch, the tension in his shoulders had eased, replaced by an earnest determination. The foundations of his new life might be fragile, but with each visit, each heartfelt effort, they grew a little stronger. Over the following month, Jordan began laying groundwork for a major expansion of Myers Development Group into New York. Though he framed it as a strategic move, given the city's booming real estate opportunities, privately, he knew his motivation ran deeper. He wanted to be closer to Jamie, to Alicia, to the family life he was slowly forging. He confided his intentions to Philip, who reacted with a cautious nod. "It's bold," Philip said, tapping a pen against a folder. "The board will question whether you're following profit or personal interest." "Why not both?" Jordan countered. "New York is a natural next step. Our investors have been eyeing Manhattan properties for years." Philip sighed, offering a faint grin. "I'll support you, but you'd better be ready for a showdown in the boardroom. And your father—" Jordan straightened his shoulders. "He'll fight it, but I'm prepared." In the meantime, Jordan made excuses for frequent New York trips, citing market research or networking events. Ryan Thompson's curiosity grew, but Jordan maintained tight control of any leakable details, knowing his ambition could spark corporate rivalries if revealed too soon. Between meetings, Jordan immersed himself in Jamie's world. He chaperoned a preschool field trip to a small museum, surprising both Alicia and the teacher by showing up in casual clothes and a relaxed demeanor. Jamie beamed, pointing out ancient dinosaur bones, his small hand wrapped in Jordan's. "You really came," Jamie said, eyes shining. "Of course," Jordan answered. "I promised, didn't I?" In these small, everyday moments, Jordan found a sense of belonging he had never experienced. The once impenetrable fortress he'd built around himself began to crumble. He still felt tension whenever a corporate issue flared up, but being with Jamie tempered his stress in a way no business success ever had. One afternoon, Jordan took Alicia and Jamie out for a stroll through a neighborhood near the East River, scouting potential office spaces. Jamie perched on Jordan's shoulders, squealing with delight at the city skyline. Alicia watched them with a soft smile, occasionally offering her own insights into local real estate. At a quiet coffee shop, Jordan unrolled a set of floor plans, pointing to possible layouts for a future Myers Development New York branch. Jamie leaned over, jabbing a finger at a blueprint and proclaiming, "Put a big slide right here." Jordan laughed, ruffling the boy's hair. "We'll see if that makes it past the finance team." Alicia sipped her coffee, glancing between father and son with a tender spark in her eyes. "He's right, though. If you want employees to love coming to work, a slide never hurts." Jordan grinned, warming to the playful banter. "Next, you'll suggest building an in-office daycare." Alicia raised an eyebrow. "Why not? Modern workplaces need family-friendly policies, after all." Her remark hung in the air, a subtle hint of what kind of values they might uphold together. Jordan felt a flutter in his chest, a realization that this expansion wasn't just about property deals, but about reshaping his company's culture and his own priorities. Yet beneath the optimism, challenges loomed. Ryan Thompson's frequent calls hinted at mounting suspicion. "Sir, the board wants an update on your recent acquisitions. They're concerned about the cost of a New York branch," Ryan said on one call. "Keep them patient," Jordan replied, unruffled. "I'll present a formal proposal soon." In Boston, Walter Myers grew increasingly vocal in his skepticism. Though he hadn't formally met Jamie yet, he challenged Jordan's every move toward New York, accusing him of letting emotions cloud his judgment. Jordan ignored the barbs, focusing on quietly gathering data to justify the expansion. Meanwhile, Jamie asked innocent but pointed questions. "Why do you and Mommy live in different places? Will we ever live together?" Jordan faltered whenever he heard these queries, uncertain how to answer. Late one night, he confided in Alicia over the phone. "He wants to know if we'll be like the other families he sees." Living together, doing everything under one roof? Alicia's silence crackled through the line. Then she spoke gently. "We're not there yet, Jordan. We can't rush it. We need stability first, for him and for us." Jordan swallowed. "I understand. I just want to be honest with him. Tell him we're figuring out how to make sure he has both parents in his life," Alicia suggested. "That's the truth." He nodded, gazing at the architectural sketches on his desk for the future branch. Ambitious plans indeed, both for the company and for his personal life. In the hush of his office, Jordan felt a blend of excitement and trepidation. The path ahead was uncharted territory, requiring the same careful design and sturdy foundations he used in building skyscrapers. This time, though, the stakes were immeasurably higher, because he was building a bridge to a family he dared to hope might one day be whole. The boardroom buzzed with restless energy as Jordan stepped in, a thick folder of documents under his arm. Nearly a dozen board members occupied their seats, expressions ranging from curiosity to disapproval. His father, Walter Myers, sat at the far end with an unreadable face that made Jordan's stomach twist. Philip Grayson, ever the loyal partner, offered Jordan a faint nod of encouragement. Jordan cleared his throat, activating the presentation on the large screen. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, voice steady despite the tension prickling his neck. "I appreciate you convening on short notice. Today, I'm presenting our plan to launch a major branch in New York." An immediate murmur rippled through the room. Walter lifted a hand, silencing the chatter. "A major branch," he echoed. "We have a small satellite office there already. Why pour funds into a new expansion when Boston still requires our leadership?" Jordan tightened his grip on the clicker. "Because New York is a ripe market with untapped real estate potential. Our own financial projections," he clicked to the next slide, displaying numbers and growth forecasts, "indicate we could capture a larger share of commercial properties, especially if we move swiftly. I believe this is a strategic move that will secure our company's future." Ryan Thompson, seated near the center, raised an eyebrow. "Interesting timing. One wonders if your personal life in New York is driving this decision more than business logic." His tone dripped with polite malice. Several heads turned at that remark, and Jordan's pulse kicked up a notch. He sensed the room dividing into factions, those loyal to his leadership and those keen to find any weakness to exploit. He took a slow breath, projecting calm. "My personal affairs have no bearing on sound business. Our independent analysts confirm the viability of this expansion." Walter leaned forward, steepling his fingers. "Be that as it may, rumors about your newfound family responsibilities are circulating. Is there truth to the speculation you have a child in New York?" The moment the question left Walter's lips, a heavy hush fell. Jordan's gaze flicked to Philip, who wore a grim expression. So, the private had become public. Jordan straightened. "Yes," he said, voice level. "I recently discovered I have a 4-year-old son. His mother lives in Manhattan. However, let me be clear, my duties as CEO remain my top priority. This expansion stands on its own merits, regardless of my personal situation." A few board members whispered among themselves, uncertain how to react. One older woman, Ms. Howard, cleared her throat. "I respect your honesty, Jordan, but I worry about the optics. A sudden revelation of a secret child, followed by an expensive move to the child's city. The press might spin this negatively." Jordan glanced around the table, determined not to show a flicker of doubt. "I can handle the press. What matters is that we don't miss a prime opportunity to grow. Boston is stable, but we need to invest where the market is thriving." Walter's gaze narrowed. "And how do you propose we fund this? Our waterfront fiasco has cost us millions. The board is hesitant to support another large outlay without guarantees." The memory of the waterfront project's setbacks tightened Jordan's chest. Yet he pressed onward, clicking through slides detailing financing, partnership deals, and potential investor interest. "We'll allocate resources gradually, focusing on partnership models that limit risk. I'm not asking for blind faith. This plan is meticulously vetted." Just as Jordan finished his explanation, Ryan Thompson pushed back his chair, speaking loudly enough for all to hear. "I have information that suggests Jordan's real motivation isn't expansion, but relocating to be near his secret family. Some might consider that an abuse of power." Philip stood abruptly, anger flashing in his eyes. "That's enough, Ryan. We're here for facts, not gossip." Ryan smirked. "Facts. Like the ones in these messages." He waved a printout of private emails, evidently leaked from Jordan's communications. References to visits with Alicia, early sketches of a potential new office near her neighborhood. Gasps arose around the table. Ms. Howard's face paling. Walter's gaze darkened in quiet fury. Jordan bristled. "That's confidential company material. Where did you get it? Ryan shrugged, feigning innocence. I came across it. Now we all see the real reason for this expansion. He turned to the board. Do we want to tie company resources to our CEO's personal entanglements? Before Jordan could respond, Philip banged a fist on the table. Ryan, you've broken every protocol by accessing those files. This is a clear violation of privacy and trust. Walter regarded Ryan with silent scrutiny, then turned back to Jordan. Is it true? Did you plan to position the office close to where your child lives? Jordan refused to flinch. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a factor, but the numbers support the move. Personal life or not, it's a profitable strategy. The room roiled with tension, disbelieving stares and hushed, urgent conversations. Jordan felt sweat gather at his collar. The quiet struggle for control was laid bare, a storm of corporate intrigue swirling around him. He realized that if he didn't stand firm, all he'd worked to build, for both the company and his new family, could slip away. The fallout from the board meeting was swift and painful. A minor press outlet got wind of the secret heir rumor and ran an inflammatory piece within days. Headlines screamed, CEO Jordan Myers hides love child, corporate expansion in jeopardy. Soon, Alicia and Jamie were under unexpected scrutiny from photographers lurking outside her Manhattan apartment. Desperate for privacy, Alicia agreed with Jordan's suggestion to slip away to his country house in Vermont. The estate lay tucked in rolling hills, flanked by towering pines that offered natural seclusion. With the media vultures prowling, a secluded escape felt like the only way to breathe. They arrived late one evening, Alicia clutching Jamie's hand while Jordan led them up the steps of the rustic cabin. The moonlight cast long shadows across the porch. Jordan flicked on the lights, revealing a cozy interior of warm wood paneling, plush rugs, and a crackling fireplace he'd asked a caretaker to prepare in advance. Jamie shuffled forward, wide-eyed. This place is cool, he said, a childish lisp shaping the words. Are there bears here? Jordan knelt to ruffle Jamie's hair, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Not usually, but we'll keep an eye out for any woodland friends. Alicia ran a hand along the back of a worn leather sofa. You come here often, Jordan shrugged, feeling a slight pang. Hardly ever. It's been in the family for years, but I never really had a reason to enjoy it until now. They spent the first hour settling in, storing groceries in the small kitchen, and lighting a few lamps to chase away the cabin's shadows. Jamie yawned, pointing to a painting of a forest scene above the fireplace. Alicia guided him to the guest bedroom, where Jordan had placed fresh bedding and a stuffed toy, hoping to make the boy feel at home. When Alicia returned to the main room, she found Jordan seated on the sofa, staring into the flickering fire. She sank down beside him, the warmth of the flames dancing across her features. Is this how you imagined unveiling your fatherhood, in the spotlight of a scandal? Jordan's lips curved in a humorless smile. Not exactly. I tried to keep things quiet until we could handle it on our own terms. But Ryan Thompson had other plans. Alicia hugged a throw pillow, brow furrowing. I don't understand why Ryan would do this. Is he after your position? Jordan exhaled, thinking back to Ryan's relentless ambition. He's always had his eye on climbing the corporate ladder. Maybe he thought exposing my personal life would weaken my credibility. She studied his face, then tentatively placed her hand over his. I'm sorry this is tearing at your career, but I also won't apologize for Jamie's existence. He's an incredible boy, and you're an incredible dad, even if it's all new to you. He let out a ragged breath, grateful for her support. I just hate that he's now the subject of gossip. Children shouldn't be thrust into media chaos. Alicia's gaze flicked down. I worry about him. He's excited to spend time here, but I can see he's anxious too. He asked me if you're in trouble because of him, Jordan closed his eyes, regret pulsing through him. I'll talk to him, assure him that none of this is his fault. He's just a kid who deserves a normal life. A log in the fireplace snapped, sending a flare of sparks upward. They fell into a reflective hush. The weight of uncertainty about the board's reaction, the press inquiries, and the future of Jordan's family life pressed down on them. Finally, Alicia spoke again. Let's try to enjoy this weekend. We'll go for walks, maybe teach Jamie how to fish or roast marshmallows. Keep the world at bay, just for a little while. Jordan nodded, a flicker of hope igniting in his chest. I'd like that. They stood, exhaustion tugging at their limbs, and headed to their respective rooms. Before Alicia disappeared behind her door, Jordan gently caught her hand. In the soft glow of the hallway lamp, he said, "Thank you for coming here." She smiled, sadness and affection mingling in her eyes. "Thank you for giving us a safe place to land." In the stillness that followed, Jordan gazed out a window at the moonlit pines. The cabin felt like a temporary shelter from the storm raging beyond its walls. He knew they couldn't hide forever, but at least here, for a brief reprieve, they could remember what truly mattered, forging bonds that no scandal, no corporation, and no media scrutiny could fully destroy. Those first days in Vermont offered a gentle respite. Alicia and Jamie settled into a simple routine, waking to crisp morning air perfumed with pine and dew. Jordan, freed momentarily from constant phone calls, began to rediscover small pleasures, an early cup of coffee by the lake, the crunch of gravel underfoot during a meandering walk. In the evenings, Jamie helped gather kindling for the fireplace, bundling sticks with surprising diligence. Alicia, wearing a thick sweater and fuzzy socks, guided her son around the cabin's porch, pointing out birds and squirrels darting through the trees. Jordan watched them with a quiet longing, still amazed that this could be his family if he had the courage to hold on to it. One dusk, while Jamie played with toy cars on an old rug, Jordan and Alicia shared a rare moment of calm in the living room. Flickering firelight painted their faces in a soft glow. Alicia sipped hot chocolate as Jordan recounted the chaos still brewing at Myers Development Group. "They're spinning the story for the press," Jordan said, voice low. "A formal statement is inevitable. My father hasn't spoken to me directly since the board confrontation. The man only communicates through corporate memos now." Alicia wrapped both hands around her mug. "He's probably furious you're even here." Jordan nodded. "I'm sure he thinks I'm hiding or shirking my duties, but Philip's covering things in my absence, and I trust him. Ryan, on the other hand..." He paused, tension creeping into his posture. "I'm certain Ryan fed the press those personal details. Philip's investigating his communications." Alicia frowned. "Ryan must be counting on the board turning against you, but what does he gain from it?" Jordan sighed. "Maybe he hopes they'll force me out, letting him slide into the vacuum. It's an old corporate tactic, destabilize the boss to climb the ladder." Alicia set her mug aside, a flicker of determination in her eyes. "Then we fight back. We issue our own statement, explaining you're stepping up for your child without neglecting the company. People might respect that more than you think." Jordan managed a slight smile. Her resilience bolstered him. "You're right. Hiding in Vermont forever isn't an option, but it's given me time to think about what matters most. I need to protect Jamie, yet also protect my employees and investors who depend on me." A sudden noise from the kitchen made them glance over. Jamie stood there, a bag of marshmallows clutched in his hands, beaming expectantly. "Can we roast these now?" Alicia laughed. "I guess you found my secret stash." She motioned him over. Jordan chuckled, rising to grab a few skewers from a nearby drawer. They gathered on the porch, the twilight sky above streaked with pink and orange. Jamie giggled as the marshmallows puffed and browned over a portable grill Jordan had set up. Sticky sweetness coated everyone's fingers, but the moment felt too precious to spoil with concerns about corporate battles. Later that night, once Jamie was asleep, Jordan lingered by the fireplace. Alicia joined him, and they began speaking softly about the future. She divulged her own career worries at Horizon Tech, colleagues questioning her loyalty now that Jordan was in the picture. The corporate world had its share of biases. Was Alicia using her personal connection for professional gain? She faced rumors too, just as Jordan did. They found an unexpected solace in sharing these fears, acknowledging that both of them stood at a crossroads between personal life and corporate demands. Sensing the mutual vulnerability, Jordan reached for her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "Staying silent will only let the rumor mill grow," she said, voice gentle. "We should hold a press conference or release a statement that clarifies our stance. We're co-parenting. We're respecting each other's careers. No secrets. No shame." Jordan swallowed, the idea both intimidating and strangely appealing. "I've never been good at public vulnerability, but you're right." Alicia leaned against him, the warmth of her shoulder providing quiet reassurance. "I'll stand by you, if that's what you want. We can show them we're united in raising Jamie, no matter what the board or the press says." Emotion tangled in Jordan's chest, equal parts gratitude and apprehension. He thought of his father's scorn, Ryan's treachery, the anxious board members, and the child now sleeping under the same roof. Then he looked at Alicia, saw the resolve in her eyes, and felt a stirring of hope. "Thank you," he whispered, voice husky. "I do want that." In that moment, he realized they were not merely fleeing the aftermath of corporate scandal, they were rebuilding something profound. The battered walls of Jordan's life might require careful reconstruction, but here, away from the glare of headlines, he found the promise of a stronger foundation. By the time the weekend ended, Jordan had reached a decision. He'd confront the uproar in Boston directly, lay out a clear path for the New York branch, and publicly acknowledge his role as Jamie's father. The last detail would demand transparency, but it was the only way to curb wild speculation and protect his family from further intrusion. Alicia agreed to join him at the upcoming press conference, set for the following week in Boston. They left Vermont with renewed determination, though Jamie seemed sad to say goodbye to the cozy cabin and its promise of roasted marshmallows each night. Returning to the city, Jordan dove into logistical details with Philip, who greeted him in the Myers Development Group's executive suite. "Things have heated up since you left," Philip said, eyes scanning a flurry of paperwork. "Ryan's been spreading rumors that you're financially compromised by child support demands. It's baseless, but it's got some of the board members rattled." Jordan gritted his teeth. "We'll address it all at once. I'm holding a full press briefing in our main conference hall. The official statement is ready. I just need your help persuading the board to back me rather than letting Ryan's gossip run rampant." Philip gave a wry smile. "I've been working behind the scenes. Let's say Ryan won't be blindsiding us again. I've uncovered emails connecting him to a rival development firm. He was leaking insider info for personal gain, trying to orchestrate your downfall." A jolt of anger spiked through Jordan's veins. "That traitor! We can't let him stay a moment longer." "Agreed," Philip said firmly. "I've scheduled an emergency board meeting right before your press conference. We'll present the evidence." "That should strip him of any credibility." Jordan exhaled, tension unwinding from his shoulders. If Ryan was removed, it would lessen the internal sabotage. "Thank you," he murmured, appreciation flickering in his eyes. "You've done a lot, Philip." Philip shrugged. "You'd do the same for me." In the days leading up to the announcement, Jordan balanced finalizing the press statement with time spent in New York. Alicia arranged for Jamie to stay with her parents temporarily, hoping to keep him away from paparazzi. They both dreaded the possibility of reporters ambushing them at the press event. The evening before the big day, Jordan and Alicia checked into a Boston hotel, each weighed down by nerves. Sitting across from each other in the quiet lounge, they ran through possible questions the media might hurl at them. Were you hiding this child for years? Is this office expansion a cover for personal motives? How will you divide your time between corporate duties and fatherhood? I'll handle any question about the timeline, Alicia assured him. I'll explain I did try to contact you, but we lost touch. That's the truth. Jordan nodded, studying her face. The last thing he wanted was for Alicia to endure public scrutiny over events neither of them could have fully controlled. I appreciate it, he said softly. We should keep it brief, to the point. Our personal life is ours. She managed a small smile. At least we're on the same page. The next morning arrived in a whirlwind. Jordan first met with the board in a closed-door session. Philip presented damning evidence against Ryan Thompson, email chains, phone logs, and transaction records tying him to a rival competitor. Furious outbursts erupted around the table as board members realized how thoroughly Ryan had deceived them. Walter Myers sat stony-faced, neither defending nor protesting his son's push for Ryan's immediate termination. Ryan tried to protest innocence, but the evidence was overwhelming. In a tense vote, the board agreed to fire him and security escorted him from the building. Jordan fought conflicting emotions, satisfaction at removing a saboteur, regret over once trusting the man. Then came the press conference. Alicia stood with Jordan at the podium, her chin held high. Dozens of reporters were gathered, cameras poised. Philip introduced Jordan, who stepped forward in a crisp suit, face composed. He had rehearsed his speech a dozen times, but his heart still pounded. Thank you all for coming, Jordan began, voice steady. I'm here to address both our corporate vision and recent speculation regarding my personal life. First, regarding the expansion into New York, it remains a sound strategy, supported by rigorous market data. He gestured to slides that briefly flashed on a screen, showing growth charts. Contrary to rumors, this is not a hasty decision. It's a calculated move that will benefit our investors and our company. He paused, casting a glance at Alicia, who gave him a slight nod. Now, on a more personal note, I recently discovered I have a son, Jamie, who is 4 years old. His mother, Alicia Hughes, and I had lost contact after a single encounter years ago. Once we reconnected, I chose to be fully present in my child's life. I am proud to be his father. Camera shutters clicked in rapid staccato. Questions erupted, but Jordan raised a hand. I ask you to respect our privacy. My commitment to this company is unwavering, but I will also fulfill my responsibility as a parent. We are not ashamed, just two people co-parenting a wonderful child. The expansion plan aligns with business interests and my desire to be near my son, but I assure you this company will continue to thrive under my leadership. He stepped back, allowing Alicia to say a few words. She spoke with quiet grace, confirming the timeline of Jamie's birth and explaining the difficulty of locating Jordan. The press seemed uncertain whether to pounce or acknowledge the sincerity before them. As they wrapped up, Jordan caught sight of Walter standing at the back of the room. His father's face remained impassive, but for a fleeting second, Jordan thought he glimpsed a flicker of something akin to respect, or maybe resignation. Either way, the structural plans for his business and his life were now clear. The aftermath of the press conference reverberated for days. Financial reporters dissected Jordan's expansion strategy, while tabloids fixated on every detail of his personal life. Jamie's age, Alicia's career, and whether wedding bells might soon ring. Jordan paid little mind to the gossip. focusing instead on the strong wave of investor interest that followed his public explanation. The transparency seemed to reassure many stakeholders that he wasn't hiding anything else. The board, relieved by Jordan's calm handling of the scandal, issued a statement supporting the New York branch. Even Walter Myers, who had been so vocal in his opposition, remained noticeably silent. Philip believed it was a sign Walter wouldn't stand in Jordan's way any longer, though he doubted the old man would ever offer a warm embrace of the changes. Meanwhile, Alicia juggled her own challenges at Horizon Tech. Whispers about favoritism surfaced. Is she leveraging her relationship with the Myers CEO for business gains? Alicia tackled each rumor professionally, standing firm that she had earned her position through merit. Nonetheless, the tension wore on her. Seeking a moment of peace, Jordan invited Alicia and Jamie to Boston for a weekend. The city felt less frenzied now that the press had found newer stories to chase. He wanted Jamie to see where he grew up, a chance to bridge their two worlds. Jamie's eyes sparkled with excitement when Jordan led him through the grand lobby of Myers Development Group's headquarters. Polished floors and towering glass walls loomed above them. The boy gasped, pressing his nose to the window overlooking the downtown skyline. "Dad, look, those buildings look like the ones I draw." Jordan couldn't hide his grin. "Maybe one day you'll design buildings like these." They rode the elevator up to Jordan's top-floor office. Alicia trailed behind, observing the environment that had shaped Jordan's life. Modern lines, minimalist decor, and sweeping city views. She caught the admiring stares of a few employees who recognized the pair from the press conference. On the executive floor, Jordan guided Jamie around, introducing him to some staff members. Most responded warmly, eager to see the kinder side of their notoriously driven CEO. Vanessa, Jordan's longtime assistant, offered Jamie a lollipop and winked at Alicia, seeming genuinely happy for them. The next day, Jordan took them to the childhood home he once shared with Walter. Despite the property's grandeur, a sprawling green lawn, landscaped hedges, it felt oddly cold. Walter appeared at the door, greeting them with a measured politeness. Alicia's posture went rigid, her protective instincts on full alert. Jamie, uncertain, clung to Jordan's hand. Walter cleared his throat. "Welcome." His gaze flicked to Jamie. "So, you're the boy I've heard so much about." Jamie peered up with wide eyes. "Are you my grandpa?" A flicker of something passed over Walter's face, surprise, maybe discomfort. "Yes," he said at last, voice stiff. "I am." Jordan knelt beside Jamie, offering reassurance. "It's okay, buddy. We're just visiting." Inside, the atmosphere felt strained. Walter led them to a drawing room with antique furniture, a place that had once intimidated Jordan in his youth. Alicia and Jamie settled on a love seat, while Jordan stood near the mantel, trying to gauge his father's mood. Walter's gaze lingered on Jamie's green eyes, the same shade that defined the Myers family line. "He looks like you at that age," Walter finally remarked, his tone strangely subdued. Jordan nodded. "Yes, he does." Silence hung for several moments. Alicia, sensing the awkwardness, prompted Jamie to show Walter a small figurine he'd brought, a miniature skyscraper toy. Jamie nervously extended it. "Dad helped me build it. Do you like buildings?" Walter's lips twitched. "I suppose I do. I've spent decades financing them." Jamie blinked, not sure how to respond. Alicia gently squeezed the boy's shoulder, giving him an encouraging nod. Jordan watched the uneasy exchange, recalling his own childhood attempts to gain Walter's approval. He recognized the wariness in Walter's eyes, part hesitation, part regret. After some stilted conversation, Walter reached into a corner cabinet. "I kept something from Jordan's childhood," he said, voice low. He withdrew a set of wooden building blocks, the paint chipped from age. "I thought perhaps Jamie would want them." A ripple of surprise moved through Jordan. He hadn't seen those blocks in years. They were a gift from his mother, one of the few memories of her before she left. The significance wasn't lost on him. Jamie accepted the blocks, fascination gleaming in his eyes. "Thank you, Grandpa," he exclaimed, a child's forgiveness and excitement dissolving any tension. Walter offered a tight nod, as if uncertain how to proceed. Alicia smiled, clearly moved by the gesture. Jordan felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that Walter was trying, sadness for all the missed opportunities between father and son. When they finally left, Jamie clutched the wooden blocks against his chest, chattering happily about building a tower at home. Alicia slid her hand into Jordan's, squeezing gently. He returned the pressure, realizing that despite Walter's stoic limitations, this moment was a small victory. Emerging into the afternoon sun, Jordan looked at the stately house behind them. The foundations of his own childhood might have been laid on cold marble, but a warmer future beckoned for Jamie. Though he and Walter might never have an openly loving bond, at least a flicker of acceptance had shone through the cracks. They drove away, wooden blocks rattling in the back seat, and Jordan found himself smiling at Alicia in the rearview mirror. Secure foundations didn't always spring from perfect origins. Sometimes they were forged from slow, careful reconciliation, each piece deliberately set in place until a sturdy structure emerged, capable of sheltering the ones who mattered most. Under the bright lights of a newly renovated Manhattan office tower, Jordan Myers stood at a podium draped in the Myers Development Group logo, preparing to cut a ceremonial ribbon. The newly established New York branch hummed with an air of celebration. Polished floors, modern fixtures, and an open concept design gave the space a vibrant feel, an intentional departure from the more traditional Boston headquarters. Clusters of employees and well-wishers mingled about, clinking champagne glasses. They whispered excitedly about the company's future and exchanged smiles with Alicia, who wore a simple but elegant navy dress. Jamie, perched near the front with Philip and Vanessa, fidgeted with a small pair of child-safe scissors, waiting for his big moment. Jordan had insisted that his son stand alongside him for the ribbon cutting, determined to make this launch a family affair. A hush fell as Jordan approached the microphone. "Good evening," he began, scanning the crowd. His eyes flicked to Jamie, then to Alicia. "Tonight we celebrate a bold step for Myers Development Group, our brand new office in New York City. For years, we've envisioned expanding our footprint here, and this branch will allow us to forge deeper connections in one of the world's most dynamic real estate markets." Applause rippled through the room. Jordan continued, "But before we cut the ribbon, there's something more personal I'd like to share. For those of you who don't know, I recently discovered I have a son, Jamie." He gestured for Jamie to join him, and the boy bounded forward with a wide grin. "I'm introducing him formally to our team, not just as the future of my family, but as a reminder that every building we design and every project we undertake ultimately serves real people with real families." Jamie tugged at Jordan's sleeve, prompting a wave of gentle laughter from the audience. Alicia watched with a mixture of pride and amusement, recalling how months ago Jordan would have shuddered at the thought of mixing personal life with business. Now, he seemed at ease with the delighted stares of his employees, his voice steady and clear. When the ribbon was finally snipped, Jamie's small scissors adding their own valiant effort, the crowd cheered. Photographers captured the moment, documenting a scene that might have been unthinkable just a short while ago. A powerful CEO openly embracing fatherhood, his once guarded heart wide open. After the ceremony, employees roamed the gleaming floors, admiring the collaborative lounges and glass-walled meeting rooms. Philip took the opportunity to lead a few potential investors on a quick tour, while Vanessa, beaming in a chic blazer, passed out informational brochures. Jordan drifted between conversations, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries, though he never lost sight of Jamie and Alicia. Eventually, Jordan guided them to a quieter corner near the wall of windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline. The lights of the city glittered like scattered diamonds, an apt backdrop for a night of new beginnings. Jamie pressed his nose against the glass, enthralled by the sea of skyscrapers. "I used to dream about building in New York," Jordan murmured to Alicia, placing a hand on her back. "Now that I'm here with you and Jamie, it feels complete." Alicia smiled softly. "I'm proud of you. Balancing corporate ambition with family isn't easy." From behind them, a familiar baritone voice chimed in. "And yet, you managed to make it look almost effortless." Turning, they discovered Walter Myers, who had quietly slipped into the event. His expression was as composed as ever, but the slightest flicker of fondness creased his eyes. "Father," Jordan said, recovering quickly from his surprise. "I didn't realize you were coming." Walter's gaze shifted to Jamie, who had just noticed the newcomer. For a tense moment, the two regarded each other, generations apart, yet bound by the Myers name. Walter cleared his throat. "I wanted to see this office for myself. Seems I owe you an apology for doubting it." Jordan almost smiled, but caution tethered his reaction. "I'm glad you're here," Walter responded with a stiff nod, then extended a small wrapped box toward Jamie. "I thought you might appreciate this, young man. It's an old drafting kit, miniature scale, that belonged to your father when he was about your age. Perhaps it will inspire you." Jamie's eyes sparkled as he accepted the gift. "Thank you, Grandpa." Walter's features softened. With that, he excused himself, leaving father and son momentarily speechless. Alicia touched Jordan's arm, sensing the swirl of emotions he struggled to contain. As the evening wore on, the crowd thinned, and Jordan strolled through the corridors with Alicia and Jamie, flicking off lights and ensuring everything was in order. The new architecture of the office seemed a fitting metaphor for the internal transformation Jordan had undergone. Once built on rigid pillars of isolation, his life was now designed around open communication, shared commitment, and the joy of watching Jamie discover the world. At the exit, they lingered, gazing at the newly affixed Myers Development Group plaque. Jordan bent down to Jamie's level. "What do you think, buddy?" "I think it's really tall," Jamie said, craning his neck at the high ceilings. "And really cool." Jordan ruffled his son's hair. "So are you." With that, they stepped outside, ready to face whatever came next. And for the first time, Jordan felt as though every beam and column in his life was in its rightful place. Jordan Myers juggled two sets of keys these days: his longtime Boston penthouse and his newly purchased Manhattan apartment. He still spent part of each month in Boston, overseeing legacy projects and meeting with the board, but most of his heart and his free hours now resided in New York. It was in this balancing act that he found his greatest challenge yet, learning how to blend his once solo existence with the rhythms of fatherhood. Late one Monday morning, Jordan was on a crucial investor call, discussing potential expansions into mixed-use developments. His assistant discreetly slipped him a note. "Jamie's school is calling. Urgent." Jordan blinked, apologized to the investors, and stepped into the hallway. This was a scenario he never could have imagined a year ago, halting a multi-million-dollar negotiation to address a preschool concern. The voice of Jamie's teacher crackled through the phone, explaining that Jamie had tripped on the playground and twisted his ankle. Nothing serious, but he was asking for his dad. Jordan's chest tightened. The memory of his own father dismissing small injuries as frivolous still haunted him. "I'll be right there," he said, already mentally rearranging the remainder of his day. A short time later, Jordan arrived at the school, loosening his tie as he hurried through the bright hallways decorated with finger paintings. He found Jamie in the nurse's station, eyes rimmed with tears, but bravely insisting it didn't hurt much. The relief on his son's face upon seeing him was all the confirmation Jordan needed to know he was doing the right thing. Meanwhile, Alicia maintained her demanding role at Horizon Tech. She sometimes came home late, exhausted from managing finances and fending off subtle workplace politics. On those nights, Jordan would stay at her apartment, if he was in the city, tucking Jamie into bed after reading a short story, then dozing off on the living room sofa. One evening, Alicia finished a lengthy conference call to find Jordan and Jamie both asleep on the couch. The child sprawled across his father's chest. The sight brought tears to her eyes. Jordan, the once guarded CEO, slept soundly beneath a small boy who trusted him entirely. She draped a blanket over them, quietly reflecting on how much had changed since that fateful flight months ago. As Jordan grew more comfortable in New York, the people around him noticed. Employees at the new branch described him as relaxed, even approachable, a far cry from the steely figure he'd been in Boston. Philip, who commuted every few weeks to check on the Manhattan office, joked that fatherhood had given Jordan a human face. But not all the reintegration was smooth. Old habits of micromanagement crept back whenever a project faltered, and Jordan had to fight the urge to bury himself in spreadsheets, ignoring Alicia's calls. During one tense quarter, a real estate deal threatened to collapse, sending Jordan into overdrive. He nearly forgot Jamie's school orientation day until Alicia reminded him gently but firmly. "You can't let fear run you," she told him, laying a hand on his shoulder. "Trust the people you've hired, Delegate Jordan. You can't be everywhere at once." Her words lingered, guiding him to relinquish control more often. He delegated to rising talents in the company, empowering them rather than hoarding decisions. It felt risky at times, but with each success they achieved, Jordan found it easier to step away from the office to attend a parent-teacher meeting or join Jamie on a library trip. Among the many changes, Philip and Vanessa's evolving relationship stood out. As the new office stabilized, Philip spent more time in Manhattan, time he used to cultivate a budding romance with Vanessa. It surprised Jordan to see his typically jovial partner become so shy about personal matters. One afternoon, Philip nervously approached Jordan in his Manhattan office. I'm thinking of asking Vanessa to marry me," Philip admitted, cheeks flushing. Jordan grinned, genuinely happy for his friend. "Congratulations. Do you know how you'll propose?" Philip shrugged. "Not yet. Maybe something quiet." "She's not one for big crowds." Jordan nodded, offering an encouraging pat on his friend's back. "Just make it meaningful. I'm sure she'll love it." Seeing Philip and Vanessa ready to settle down only highlighted Jordan's own shifting priorities. Every time he saw Alicia teaching Jamie to tie his shoelaces or reading bedtime stories, he felt a pull in his chest, a desire to create something enduring for the three of them. Yet he respected Alicia's pace, aware that co-parenting and romance could become tangled. For now, he focused on weaving their daily routines together. Alicia, in turn, allowed him deeper into her world, letting him handle grocery shopping, coordinating with babysitters when she traveled, and even assisting her parents with minor household repairs. Slowly, a new normal took shape. Jordan's phone buzzed just as often with preschool updates as it did with corporate news, and the sight of Jamie's drawings taped to his office wall served as a reminder of what truly mattered. Reintegration wasn't just about merging cities or offices, it was about folding love, responsibility, and ambition into one cohesive life, a tapestry woven from threads that once seemed irreconcilable. On a crisp autumn afternoon, Jordan walked through a bustling conference hall where Myers Development Group co-hosted an expo aimed at promoting family-friendly workplaces. It was an idea he'd championed after experiencing firsthand how challenging it was to balance corporate demands with caring for a child. Rows of booths showcased creative initiatives, on-site daycares, flexible scheduling, parenting workshops. Philip and Vanessa greeted visitors by a large display featuring Myers Development Group's new policies, paid parental leave, childcare stipends, and dedicated family lounges in their newest buildings. Jordan had become an unlikely spokesperson for these reforms, fielding questions from curious CEOs who once scoffed at the notion of mixing business with personal life. Nearby, Alicia led a panel discussion on financial planning for working parents, her calm, authoritative voice resonating through the microphone. Occasionally, her eyes met Jordan's in the crowd, and they exchanged proud smiles. The transformation in both their lives felt astonishing. Alicia, once overwhelmed by single parenthood, now advising others on sustainable finances. Jordan, once emotionally distant, now pushing to integrate family needs into corporate architecture. After the conference, Jordan and Alicia gathered with a small group of executives in one of the breakout rooms. The topic was blueprints for building a parenting-friendly culture, and Jordan found himself unexpectedly at ease, sharing his personal experiences. "We used to design our office spaces purely for efficiency," Jordan said, scanning the attentive faces. "But after I became a father, I realized efficiency means nothing if the people working there are exhausted, stressed, or can't see their kids. We need spaces where parents can check on their little ones, where work and home aren't at war." Applause broke out when he finished. A few older executives approached him afterward, confessing they'd never considered such policies before, but were now intrigued. Alicia nudged him playfully. "Look at you, Mr. Myers, changing hearts and minds," he laughed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'm just sharing blueprints. Hopefully others can build on them." As they left the expo, Alicia's phone buzzed with a Midwest area code. She excused herself to answer. Jordan watched her face pale slightly as she listened. When she hung up, she turned to him with wide eyes. "That was a recruiter from a Chicago-based firm. They want me to head their finance division. It's a big promotion." A swirl of emotions raced through Jordan. Chicago was miles away from New York, and from him. "Wow," he managed, forcing a supportive smile. "That's unexpected." Alicia folded her arms, clearly conflicted. "It is. I knew they'd been scouting talent, but I never imagined I'd be a candidate. I told them I need time to think." Jordan slid a hand into hers, weaving their fingers together. "I support whatever's best for you. But..." He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Jamie's here." "I'm here," she sighed, pressing closer. "That's the hard part. I don't want to uproot Jamie again, and I can't imagine building our relationship if I move halfway across the country." They walked in silence for a moment, passing skyscrapers that reached toward an early evening sky. "It might not be halfway," Jordan said quietly. "I have a place in Boston and an office in New York. Maybe we can figure out something if it's truly a dream job for you." Alicia studied him, lips set in a thoughtful line. "I appreciate your willingness. It's just, I finally feel like we're stable, and I'm scared of losing that progress." Jordan gently squeezed her hand. "I understand. Let's weigh every option. You have time to decide, right?" She nodded, but the tension in her features remained. That evening, after picking Jamie up from a friend's birthday party, they returned to Jordan's Manhattan apartment. While Alicia busied herself with Jamie's bedtime routine, Jordan drifted to the kitchen, lost in thought. He found a napkin near the coffee maker and recalled the simple magic trick that first connected him with Jamie on the plane. Folding the napkin into a small puppet shape, he toyed with it, remembering the child's teary-eyed fascination. Suddenly, Jamie padded in, pajamas rumpled, eyes bright with curiosity. "Are you doing the trick again?" he asked. Jordan smiled, kneeling down. "Want me to?" Jamie nodded eagerly. Jordan made the napkin disappear into his palm, then reappear from behind Jamie's ear. The boy giggled, clapping his hands. Alicia, watching from the doorway, caught Jordan's eye and smiled. She remembered the first time she saw him comfort Jamie on that flight, never guessing he would become such a fixture in their lives. Jordan handed the napkin puppet to Jamie. "This time, you keep it, so you can practice too." Jamie beamed, hugging the silly paper contraption as if it were a treasure. Alicia stepped forward, resting her head on Jordan's shoulder, the faint scent of her shampoo filling his senses. For a moment, all thoughts of Chicago drifted away. Still, the possibility hovered in the back of their minds. A dream job could redefine Alicia's career. A father and son who needed her close. A blossoming love that might be tested by distance. Sharing blueprints for a family-friendly future was one thing, but designing their own life path might require more than corporate policies and property deals. It would require an unshakable trust in each other's choices. A full year had passed since the day Jordan first boarded that crowded flight to New York. The memory of Jamie's wailing, the moment he handed the boy a napkin puppet, felt both distant and strangely fresh. A turning point that reshaped the course of his life. One early autumn weekend, Jordan whisked Alicia and Jamie back to the country house in Vermont. The trees had begun their annual transformation, painting the landscape in fiery reds and golds. The cabin's porch overlooked a broad lake, its surface reflecting the crimson-streaked sky at dusk. It was here that Jordan hoped to celebrate the milestone of a year together. A year that tested them with corporate drama, media scrutiny, and unexpected revelations, but also bound them with newfound love and purpose. They spent the days hiking through crunchy leaves, teaching Jamie how to spot animal tracks in the forest. Evenings were devoted to board games by the fire and quiet moments beneath the canopy of stars. On the last night of their stay, Jordan felt a nervous flutter in his stomach as he beckoned Alicia outside after Jamie had gone to bed. The night air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and wood smoke. Alicia joined him on the deck, rubbing her hands for warmth. Stars scattered the sky, bright and endless. Jordan slipped an arm around her waist, drawing her close. "You've been restless all day," Alicia teased softly, gazing at him with curious eyes. "Is there something on your mind?" Jordan nodded, his heart thudding. From his jacket pocket, he withdrew a small box. Alicia's breath caught, her eyes going wide. Jordan opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring that caught the starlight in its polished band. "Alicia," he began, voice trembling with raw emotion, "I never thought I'd be the kind of man who does this. I spent most of my life building skyscrapers and protecting my heart. Then you and Jamie came along, and I learned there's more to life than steel and profit margins." A tear slipped down Alicia's cheek. "Jordan," she whispered, her hand pressed to her mouth. He drew a shaky breath. "I'm not perfect. I still have a lot to learn about family and love, but you've given me a second chance at happiness. Will you marry me and help me build something that lasts forever?" For a moment, the world was silent, save for the rustle of a gentle breeze through the pines. Alicia's eyes brimmed with tears as she nodded. "Yes," she managed, voice cracking with emotion. "1,000 times yes." Jordan slid the ring onto her finger, relief and joy washing over him. They embraced, hearts pounding in tandem beneath the vast sky. The significance of this vow pulsed between them, no longer just co-parents or colleagues, but partners in every sense. They stayed outside for a while, wrapped in each other's arms, the chill of the night air forgotten. When they finally stepped back inside, they found Jamie standing in the hallway, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. He rubbed sleepy eyes, glancing between them. "Mommy," Jamie asked in a drowsy voice. "Why are you crying?" Alicia knelt and held him close, tears still glistening. "I'm happy, honey. Daddy just asked me to marry him." Jamie's face lit up, though the concept of marriage seemed vague to him. "So, we can all live together?" Jordan crouched beside them, brushing a gentle hand through Jamie's hair. "We're working on it," he said softly. "But yes, we'll be a family." Tears of joy mingled with laughter as they settled Jamie back to bed, promising him a special celebration when they returned to the city. Later, Alicia and Jordan sat by the fireplace, hands entwined, dreaming of what lay ahead. Wedding plans, a shared home, possibly even a sibling for Jamie one day. It felt like the final piece of a puzzle that had been in the making ever since that chance meeting on the airplane. Before leaving Vermont the next morning, a courier arrived with a letter bearing Walter Myers' seal. Inside was a single typed page. "I'm transferring my remaining shares of the company to you. I won't stand in the way of your vision any longer. Despite our differences, I acknowledge your success as a man and a father. Make this legacy one we can both be proud of. Walter." Jordan read it twice, awe and relief swirling in his chest. Though not an open declaration of love, it was perhaps the closest Walter could come to giving his blessing. He showed the note to Alicia, who pressed a gentle kiss to his cheek. "He's proud of you," she said, voice tender, in his own way. They packed up the car, with Jamie insisting on taking the wooden building blocks Walter had given him. As they drove away, the Vermont house grew small in the rearview mirror, but the warmth of its memories lingered. The road stretched out before them, a path to a future built not merely on corporate success, but on a foundation of love and devotion that had once seemed impossible. And in the quiet, with Alicia's ring gleaming on her hand and Jamie humming happily to himself in the back seat, Jordan felt the unmistakable certainty that real skyscrapers weren't the steel towers he raised in cities, but the bonds he forged in the hearts of those he loved. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.